Alrighty. Hi, Paul. Mr. Talbot, see you lurking. This is terrible. Oh, what is going on here? This is diabolical. Why is it showing up there and not in here? That's very strange. I can see the chat on my phone and nothing is happening in the chat on the live stream. How you going, Trent? What's going on, mate? Or if I post something, it will pop up. Okay. It's very weird, but it's on my phone, so it doesn't matter. How is everyone? How's it going, Trent? How's business, mate? Haven't spoken in a long time. How you been? Oh, this is terrible. I'll be right back. I've got to fix this. That's good to hear. Very good to hear. Any interesting installs happening at the moment? Or is it just the same old, not the same old thing, but you know. I guess have you got any interesting projects on at the moment? Hello, Matt. How are you? Oh. So this is kind of an off-the-cuff live stream, guys. I've got a couple of things that I can dribble on about. But look, does anyone have a starting question or comment or application or anything like that they'd like to throw my way? It is very, very early yet. We haven't actually started the stream yet, so doesn't matter if we save this till after. It's good to see. We've got 6 people in here already. This is great. Everyone gearing up for Saturday? I see Anthony in the room. Hello, Anthony. Good to see you. David, thanks for joining again. Great to see you here. Thank you for the support. The topic tonight, Lamb, is anything. Anything that you want to ask, any question that you have. This is completely impromptu. Yeah, throw it at me. Anything that you can possibly think of or have questions on. Anything at all. This is impromptu. Let's have some fun. And yeah, just shoot the breeze, talk shop, so to speak. Everyone getting ready for a busy day tomorrow? Let's talk UV. Okay, let's talk UV. David, what specifically in regards to UV would you like, or would you like me to start? You've had to put one on your tank today. Okay, so Lamb, I'll come back to the henna nitrate checker. David, why did you put a UV on your tank? Yeah, I guess is the first question that I would ask. Why have you put it on there? I hope everyone's hydrated, by the way. Or hydrating. Okay. What sort of tank and what sort of protozoa control? So what sort of protozoa are you trying to control? Is there a specific one that you're trying to control, or is it preventative? Okay, right. So, white spot, marine white spot, crypto. Okay, so first of all, every organism has a different UV dose that is required to kill it. Now, with algae and bacteria, that can be wiped out by up to 30 millijoules per square centimetre of UV dose, and I'll get back to UV dose in a minute. Generally speaking, freshwater white spot, Udinium, Brooklanella, stuff like that can be wiped out or, inactivated. Not wiped out because it doesn't get killed, it just messes up their RNA so they can't reproduce. Can be knocked out by 110 millijoules per square centimetre. When you're talking about marine white spot, 280 millijoules. So however many times 30 goes into 280, I can't quick maths it, so that many, that much bigger. Exponentially increases with the parasite if the parasite's dose rate is higher, or if the flow rate increases, or both. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you could apply it. You can pump all the water through it on the return, and generally speaking, if you had a store system that was on recirculation, that's the optimum application, is to apply it on the return pump, because you'll be treating all the water as it goes back to the rest of the tanks, so you're not going to miss anything. Okay. On a home aquarium, because you arguably have better quarantine procedures with your home aquarium, as well as you don't have as high an influx of stock into your tank, or one would hope not, that you would only really have to treat a portion of the water per hour at your target dose rate to a rate per hour that is going to exceed the reproduction rate of the organism. That's obviously going to be dependent on temperature and also the host's. 9.33, thank you, Tony. 9.33, so a metric butt ton more than UV that's required to treat algae and bacteria. So generally speaking, as a general rule, if you're trying to remove algae from your system, whether it be a pond or a tank, you need to treat the water through the UV at a rate of one system volume, and that is the entire system volume, including filtration and sump and everything and tank, more than once every 5 hours. Algae reproduces every 5 hours, so you need to pass it through the UV more frequently than that in order to break the life cycle. Now, if you do that, within approximately 7 to 8 days, you'll have algae-free water. And I'm only referring to free-floating single-celled algae. I'm not referring to macroalgae. I'm not referring to hair algae. I'm not referring to cyano. I'm not referring to anything that lives on a substrate. I'm only talking about algae that will flow through the UV. Now, when you're talking about treating a pathogen, so whether it's a bacteria, a virus, a parasite, whatever it might be, you're looking at trying to treat the water more frequently than it reproduces, so you can get a net positive gain in reduction of that organism. Okay, so generally speaking, and I've worked on this for many years, ever since we started bringing Emperor Aquatics UVs into Australia, and now that we sell RK2 UVs. The guys that made the RK2 UVs used to work for Emperor before Emperor got sold to Pentair, but I digress. So these guys know what they're doing, right? Generally speaking, we want to pass the volume of the system, the system volume of the water through the UV about once an hour. So if you got a 1,000 litre tank, you want to be passing the water through your UV at 1,000 litres an hour or slightly more at a minimum on a side loop at your target dose rate. Now, your target dose rate is 280 millijoules per square centimetre to treat marine white spot, okay? If you want to directly treat it. Now, in my experience, back when I was working in retail facilities as well as sizing up UVs for wholesale and things like that, yeah, I started early, Kevin. I couldn't help myself. So I applied UVs on freshwater and saltwater systems at a dose rate of 110 millijoules per square centimetre, even in saltwater systems, and I noticed the prophylactic effect of knocking out the organisms with dose rates at 110 millijoules and below was enough to cut down the prevalence of saltwater white spot within the system, I would say, by over 99%. I very rarely experienced saltwater white spot. Now, this is in fish holding systems where we had imported and locally caught fish coming in. You know, it wasn't ideal, and we didn't get a lot of white spot. When we did, we treated with copper and formalin. Now, I understand that you wouldn't be able to do that in a reef system, and the problem is that in a properly designed third-party validated UV, and I must say that most of the UVs on the market these days are really clarifiers. They're probably delivering somewhere around 15 to 20 millijoules per square centimetre. Badger, I thought you weren't coming, man. That is a brilliant surprise. Thanks for showing up. So they're you know 100% behind the eight ball compared to standard, because all your standard UVs from RK2, Pentair now that they were Emperor, and a couple of the others are generally sized at 30 millijoules, and they're third party validated. Now, obviously, as the dose rate goes up for the same flow rate, you need a much larger UV. If that UV is 150 watt, our 150 watt RK2 UV is 2.1 meters long and 5 inches in diameter. Now, you try fitting that under a 6 foot aquarium. It's not going to happen, okay? On a hobby, and the price point is hugely different. So if you have the ability to put, say, a 50 watt, and I'm talking about RK2 at the moment because I know what the dose rates are, okay? So, and you know, the sizes and things like that. So if you go ahead and put a 50 watt under there and you only pass one volume through there an hour at, you know, 1,000 litres an hour, but you've got, instead of, you know, putting it on a 7,000 or a 10,000 litre per hour return pump, your UV, it needs to be 10 times smaller straight off the bat, and you can fit it underneath your aquarium. So the dose rate is going to be directly related to the flow rate that you're pushing through it, as well as the target pathogen that you're trying to kill. Now, David, I will ask, what brand was it? And I'm not brand bashing here, I'm just wondering, what brand was it that you put on? What wattage is it that you put on, and how did you size it? And I'll get back to your comment in a minute there, Kevin. So while I'm waiting for David, Kevin, your 40 watt fixtures are almost a metre each. What 40 watters are they? A Pentair 25 watt. Okay, so how did you size that for your tank so that you got the right dose rate to kill saltwater white spot? Is my question. How big is your tank, and what flow are you putting through it? Because I can actually, I can do a sizing for you right now and tell you if it's going to hit the mark. I have the ability to do that. That is within my skill set, David. I can do that. So, how big's your tank? And what flow are you putting through it? The old Aqua Ultraviolet, main competitor to Emperor in the US. So, David, what sort of flow rate are you putting through it? Tank is 350 litres. Okay, so what sort of flow rate are you putting through it? Are you putting it through on the return pump, or are you putting it through a side loop on the sump? It's been running 2,000 litres an hour. Okay, so, right, so it's running 2,000 litres an hour, or it's running less or more than that now? I just need to know what the flow rate is running through the UV. So pump inside tank and now return. Okay, right, so 2,000 litres an hour. So 33.3 litres a minute. Okay? Now, I want to slow it down now to treat protozoa. Okay, so a 25 watt UV at 33.3 litres a minute will be giving you a dose rate of 27 millijoules per square centimetre. In order to get to directly treat saltwater white spot, you would need to, let me just fumble some numbers around here. No. Okay. So a flow rate of 3 litres per minute will give you a 300 millijoule per square centimetre dose. Okay, so let's say 3.2 litres a minute will give you 280 millijoules per square centimetre, which is enough to directly inactivate saltwater white spot. Now, you could do that on a side loop in the sump, or you could do it straight out of the tank. Now, I'll get into pre-filtration in a minute, but what I want to do is just calculate 3.2 litres a minute by 60. That's 192 litres per hour. Now, you've got a 350 litre tank, so that falls below the once per hour turnover minimum target that I would want to aim for with a UV to directly treat an organism like that. Okay, I'd want to be pushing 350 litres a minute through it, but you're not going to get the dose rate out of it to directly inactivate saltwater white spot. So 190, 350 divided by 192 is, okay, so you're going to be treating the tank volume every 1.8 hours. Now, yeah, bigger UV. Okay, so Kevin raises a good point. In a perfect world, bigger UV. Okay. Now, will saltwater white spot reproduce faster than every 1.8 hours or faster than every 2 hours? I don't know the speed of the reproduction of white spot throughout its various life stages. The other thing you've got to take into account is mixing. So just because you're treating one volume an hour doesn't mean that you're treating all the water within that tank every hour. It means that you're treating one water volume through that UV. You might only be physically treating half the tank or 25% of the tank by the time you get mixing within the system. Okay? That's why I say minimum of once per hour. Now, the other option you have, well, look, ideally you probably want to be targeting the parasite directly for now to try and help to control it, and then you can knock that flow, you can knock the dose rate right back by increasing the flow so that you can treat more water per hour at a lower dose rate. Okay. The other thing that heavily affects, well, the other two things that heavily affect the effectiveness of a UV. First one is water colour and clarity of the water. So the cleanliness of your water. If you've got tannin staining that's going to refract light, that's going to hurt your transmittance, your ultraviolet transmittance, or UVT. And dirtiness and turbidity of the water, obviously. The second is particles within the water. Now, you can imagine, say I'm an organism, okay? And the light behind me is the UV light. If this is a particle, if the tea towel that I'm holding up is a particle and I'm the organism behind it, I'm getting shaded. I can pass through that UV maybe relatively unscathed, okay? This is why pre-filtration is so important, because you want to be filtering out all of the particles within the water so that you don't get shading in the UV chamber, so that any organism that goes through there has the best chance of being irradiated and inactivated by that UV light. So I would recommend that you run it on a side loop in the sump after your pre-filtration, ideally after your skimmer or after the majority of your filtration. If you are only running a filter sock at like 250 microns, I'd recommend that you probably get some sort of floss or wool or mat of some description, whether it's a cut to size mat, whether it's a pre-cut mat, whether it's some sort of chemical filter mat like carbon impregnated or polyfilter or something like that. Now you can get the zeolite filters, and you can get carbon filters and phosphate filters and stuff, or the polyfilter or stuff, or, you know, the cut to size, you know, filter floss. Stick that inside your bag, and that's going to increase your capture rate of small particles. And then because you okay, I will call protein skimmers fractionators because that's the commercial term for them. So a protein skimmer or foam fractionator will rip out particles from about 50 microns and under, okay? So putting it in the same chamber or after the chamber of your skimmer will help to remove those fine particles as well and increase the potential of your UV to have a better sterilization rate. So yes, that's good. If you're on a filter mat above the filter sock, fantastic, great. So in a nutshell, 1.8 a turnover every 1.8 hours through that UV, not ideal, but it might work. I don't have any experience with that. I would like to see a bigger UV on that, running a once per hour turnover of 350 litres an hour through the system, through the UV system, in your sump on a side loop. I would also caution you against running the water through there too slowly, because you could heat the water up substantially running through that UV. You're going to have to watch your outlet temp on that UV. Now, the Pentair UVs are like a U-shape, so they'll have the outlets both facing one way and then your tube running this way. Make sure that the inlet and outlet are both facing up. So in other words, if that's the inlet, the top of my hand is the inlet, you want to come up, elbow down, then it'll run through the UV, and then you want it to come up, and then you run elbow and out into your aquarium. And there is a very good reason for that, and that is that it will fill the UV chamber up completely. You won't get bypassing, okay? And you'll get the right dwell time. So make sure it's installed correctly. And if at all possible, install it on a bypass. You may not have to do that because it's on a side loop, but I'd still recommend it. Follow your instructions. There's some very good information in those instructions. I know, I've read them hundreds of times. So it's not any more effective to run the feed from within the tank. No, it'll be less effective because it's not pre-filtered. Okay, so that shading I was talking about, you'll be picking it up, you'll be picking up particles within the water that will then get pumped through the UV that aren't filtered out. Now, if you've got it mounted vertically next to the tank, that's fine as long as you've got the feed in from the bottom and you feed out from the top. Now, if you're pumping, pump out of the sump into the bottom of the UV, up through the UV, out the top, and then back down into your sump. And as I said, it needs to be pre-filtered. Okay, very, very important. Our standard is pre-filtering to a minimum of 50 microns. If it's more, it's great, but 50 microns, definitely. Now, if you watched the last live stream, I prattled on just a little bit about ozone. Ozone increases the effectiveness of UV out of sight. Feeds in the bottom, fantastic. So, and you know, I was talking about the clarity of the water and the UVT. There's two reasons for ozone increasing that. It's by increasing the clarity of the water and the transmittance of UV through the water, microflocculating the particles, so sticking those small particles into large particles so they're more easily removed. That also reduces the shading and increases your mechanical filtration. Well, if the pre-filter's on the pump, it will change it. If the pre-filter's before the pump pickup in a different section of the sump, it won't. But obviously, you still need to make sure that you clean your pump, yeah? With such slow flow rate as well, David, I would recommend that you regularly inspect the flow coming out of that UV, because UVs can get cooked pretty easily if you don't have water flowing through them. To the point where I've seen, you know, stuff like 1500 watt UVs, they didn't have flow switches on it to turn the pumps off. So on commercial UVs, we put a flow switch on it, so if there's no flow, it shuts the pump off, yeah? I've seen it where they haven't put flow switches on it and the pump stopped and the water has got that hot inside the UV chamber that it's boiled the water and warped and twisted the entire UV. And I'm talking 8 or 10 inch pipe with, you know, 15 mil thick walls on it. And it's just warped and twisted and just destroyed this UV. And I'm talking like $30,000 or $40,000 worth of UV. Now, that can happen on a smaller scale. Best case scenario is it melts it and then it shuts off the power. Worst case scenario is it starts a fire. Okay? Be very careful. So put checking flow on a 2 times daily checklist. Yes, do that. So after that, do you have any follow-up questions about UV sizing? My only comment after that would be, after you get on top of your white spot, increase the flow rate so that you're targeting about 110 millijoules per square centimetre. And that will have enough of a prophylactic effect, in my opinion. And that's my opinion. You don't have to take that as gospel or take that as fact. That's just my opinion through my experience. That you will create enough of a prophylactic effect to keep most, if not all, protozoans at bay effectively. Now, if you're on a 25 watt UV and you target 110 millijoules, that is a flow rate of 8 litres per minute. 8 by 60 is 480 litres per hour, so you'll actually be turning over your tank more than once an hour through the UV at that reduced dose rate of 110 millijoules. But again, in my experience, yep, good thing, let's get on to that. So in my experience, that will be enough. Now, David, you have my contact details and my phone number from the last live stream, and if you don't, private message me and I'd be happy to talk to you over the phone at any point in time about UV if you have any questions. Every 6 months, it's bulb time. Yes, Kevin, check the bulb and the sleeve and clean the sleeve. Yes, transmittance through that quart sleeve is very important. If it's not getting past that, it's definitely not getting into your water. And every 9,000 hours or 12 months, it is time to change the bulb, because that, as long as the bulbs haven't changed from the Pentair UVs, or the Emperor Aquatics as they used to be called, 9,000 hours is 80% lamp life, at which point you should change it out. That's what all of their UVs are sized on. Okay? So, yeah. Okay, so Trent has a question. UV versus ozone. And before I start that question, I need to rehydrate, because my mouth is getting dry. Okay, so UV versus ozone. My first question would be in regards to what function for water quality control, Trent. Are you talking about water clarity control? Are you talking about bacterial control? Are you talking about sterilisation? Are you talking about influence on redox? What are we talking about? And I can cover all of those if you want, but let's start with one of them and then we can go on to the others. So what in particular, what subject or parameter, I suppose, would you be requesting the difference between UV and ozone? Okay, so while I'm waiting for Trent, I'm just going to start. Okay. Algae and pathogens. Okay, so ozone has a very short half-life. I'll start with ozone. So ozone has a very short half-life. It will oxidize anything that it comes into contact with, and that's not necessarily algae and pathogens only. That's everything in the water. You know, that's mold, microparticles, dissolved fatty acids, proteins, anything like that. Okay. So, to directly control algae and pathogens, that depends on the amount of ozone at the point of contact, and then further on down the track, the resulting ORP or redox potential in the water. You won't find any reference to an exact ORP or an exact dose that's required to kill algae in water in a certain system of a certain volume. You just won't find it. You'll find dose rates to treat certain compounds, organisms, etc. at a point of contact. And by what I mean by point of contact is the direct point where it enters and contacts the water. So the venturi on your protein schema, right? Furthermore, if you've got really clean water, I'll get onto AWP in a sec. So furthermore, if you've got really clean water, you'll also find contact time versus dose rate. Okay? That's for really, really clean water. Now, if you've got water that's got all sorts of waste, dissolved waste, solid waste, and all this other kind of stuff in it, like an aquarium, you can't make the ozone dissolve one thing before another. It's not preferential. If it's got something that'll oxidize, because the oxygen molecule on the oxygen atom is very unstable, that third oxygen molecule breaks off. It doesn't discriminate against what it will oxidize. Okay. Now, I can get onto that in a sec, Paul. For running AWP at 390 to 430, in my experience, that is very high. Well, not very high. It's moderately high compared to the industry standard that everyone says that, 350 for salt water or 250 for freshwater. Okay. Once you start getting over sort of 550 to 600, that's when you start to produce ozonated byproducts like hyperbromous acid, bromates, things like that. Well, not bromates, but bromides and stuff like that are toxic to your fish. They'll kill your fish. Okay, they're very good. They're very good bactericides. They're very good microbial controls, but they're not good for your fish. To sterilize and clean water effectively with ozone, you would have to reach an ORP that would kill your fish before you achieve sterilization. Okay. Generally speaking, in the aquaculture industry for water treatment, we expect full sterilization to occur at levels above 750 millivolts, and I usually aim for levels above 850 millivolts. Now, to get even more concise with that, I actually work out what I'm trying to kill. I work out what the required ozone dose in milligrams per litre is at point of contact. Then I work out what the contact time is that I need for that ozone to take effect, and I size the unit accordingly. I have an ORP controller on it to monitor my ORP, but it's definitely not turning it on and off. I could reach ORPs of 1,000 or more if that's what it requires. Now, UV, on the other hand, you can target a specific pathogen with a specific dose rate of UV with arguably no residuals in the water. That depends on the organism, and there are some cases with some aquaculture species that, like, for instance, UV will make abalone spawn. If you put UV on a system, everyone says there's no residual with UV. UV is completely safe. The abalone aren't going through the UV, but if you put UV on an abalone holding system, like a live seafood holding system, you'll have milk water. The abalone will just spawn for some reason, and it's either got to do with EMS or it's got to do with radicals that are produced by the UV in the water. So the best course of action, if you're using it on a live culture application, is to use ozone to control water quality, improve filtration, improve redox, to hit your target level of 350, or in your case 390 to 430, and then use UV to target any specific organisms that you want if you're using it in a culture application. It's a very nuanced sizing regime for ozone, and look, I still get stumped by it sometimes. There's still some things that stump me with ozone sometimes. You know, it's not, it's an exact science, but there's a lot of things that can throw left field curveballs at you. So that would be my advice. And that's how they differ for controlling algae and pathogens and things like that. So, in other words, if you're using ozone solely to control pathogens, you're going to melt your fish before you kill the pathogen. Don't do it. Don't do it. What ozone units do you like for a 600 litre saltwater tank? Okay, so I'm thinking that you're asking me what sort of milligrams of ozone would I suggest for a 600 litre saltwater tank. I can tell you exactly because I built a calculator to work that out. So if I had a 600 litre tank, I would recommend between, that's good, you always use both. Now I'll get on to the other thing that both of them achieve in just a second. So I would recommend a dose rate between 90 to 120 milligrams per hour. Okay, that will, unless you have an absolutely putrid, filthy aquarium that isn't maintained, that has very poor filtration, that I know you won't have, Paul, because you use marine pure and polyfilter, and you know what you're doing. A dose rate of between 90 to 120 will not only get you to your target of 350 millivolts in my experience, but it'll also maintain that quite easily without you having to ramp it right up to 100%. So you'll have, you know, you'll have a lot, you know, some expansion up your sleeve. Okay. Always use ozone with an ORP controller. Always, always, always. Do never rely on setting it once and then saying, well, my bio rate's never going to change, so my ORP demand is never going to, my ozone demand is never going to change. What about you feed at 6 a.m.? The fish, you know, excrete their waste over the course of the day, but the majority of their waste they excrete maybe 3 to 4 hours after eating. Your skimmer, everything rips that out. Your ozone demand is there for that point in time, but if your ozone's constantly feeding in and you've got no more waste in the water, your high demand peak has passed, where's all that ozone go? It doesn't just magically stop. You've got nothing controlling it. So it's going to build and build and build and build. Now, the other thing is control of that ozone generator via the ORP controller, and in higher dose applications, so over sort of 500 to 1,000 milligrams per hour, really, the variable control on a lot of ozone generators that you get on smaller ones, not so much, because you're running them on air, the concentration isn't as high. So there's no real risk of overdosing unless you put a hugely massive ozone generator on a very small aquarium, even if you have it on an ORP controller. So what happens is, you have it feeding in at a set rate, and it's got to dissolve and mix in the protein skimmer and then into the water for the ORP controller to pick it up. Now, if the ORP controller and the point of injection is, you know, too far apart, or you're pushing too much in too fast, by the time your set point triggers it to turn off, you've still got all the ozone in the skimmer and in the water that hasn't reached that controller, that probe on the controller, that is still increasing the ORP. So you want to feed it in low, slow, and constant, and that's where getting the size of the ozone generator right to begin with for smaller systems, or having a properly sized ozone generator with a variable output control on it and an ORP controller for larger applications is very important. So there's a certain threshold you get to, and I'd say that's probably about, as long as it's sized correctly, probably about 500 milligrams per hour would be safe if it's sized correctly. Okay. ORP controller options. Trent, how long have you got? In aquaculture applications, we use the YSI 5200 recirculating monitor system, and the other recirculating monitors in the family. That's a multi-parameter controller. It has ORP on it, with internal relays for switching, as well as expansion modules that you can use to switch as well. We have a standalone ORP controller that we actually get OEM'd with a specific ORP probe on it, a 5-meter industrial ORP probe we get on it. That is very simple, very easy to use, but very robust. And we use that, and we brand that as our Pure Aquatics ORP controller. We put that on our live seafood holding systems and in all of our projects as well. We put that into our systems. God, you could use Apex. The old pinpoint controllers were the industry standard a while ago. You do get what you pay for. You definitely get what you pay for. So, for instance, our ORP controller goes for about 870-ish, 871, I think it is, plus GST. Yeah, but you get what you pay for. That comes with a 5-meter probe, a 5-meter industrial probe, and all wired up, ready to go. Yeah. What controller do you like to use, and do you find it reliable? I guess is the point. I always laugh, well, not laugh, but I have to think always when, say it's an aquaculture system, someone says, I've got a 50,000 litre system, I've got 5 tonnes of fish in it. I want to run Ozone. Yep, okay. So I quote them up Ozone, and there might be a 5 grand per hour Ozone generator. And I quote them the price, and that might be 2.5 grand. And then I quote them the price for the ORP controller, and they say, well, the ORP controller is nearly half the price of the Ozone generator. I'm not paying that, I'll just run it manually. And I argue that if you lose those 5 tonne of fish from an ozone overdose, you've got nothing to sell. So you might spend $800 now, but buy once, cry once. It makes no sense to spend money on an aquarium and then cheap out on the cheap controller to control ozone that, if not controlled properly, could potentially destroy your tank, kill your livestock. Look, I mean, ozone comes with its dangers, but it is an incredibly powerful tool if it's operated correctly. Aquamatic, but the relay often fails. Okay, I've never used Aquamatic, I have to say, never used it. I'm not sure how much the Aquamatic costs. If you're using the Neptune Apex, I know a lot of people in the US use that. Look, I've never used it, but from what I've seen, it's a fantastic system. I'm not sure what the Aquamatic costs. Trent, shoot me a message with your email, and I'd be happy to talk through some possible options for ORP control. As I said, buy once, cry once sort of thing. Cheap isn't always great. Cheap is very rarely great, I should say. The relay, that's another funny thing. Ozone generators are a very high voltage piece of equipment, okay? So even though they have a power rating on them, at startup, like ozone generators inside if it's a corona discharge cell, which most of them are these days, you can still get UV bulb systems, but they're inefficient compared to corona cell. And that's not a little guy inside a tube coughing. Essentially, it's passing electricity through a cell, and that electricity splits the O2 atom into 2 O molecules, and those O molecules then join O2 atoms. I'm sure you know how ozone works. That's very high voltage. At startup, it needs a lot of power. Okay, and if you're using that to switch on and off your ozone generator, power it on, power it off, you have a very high startup energy, which means that you can be putting a lot of load on those relays. Now, our standard relays in our RP controllers are 2.5 amps. We always turned our ozone generators on and off just with the relay and thought, oh yeah, it'll be fine. We looked at the power rating on our ozone generator. Yeah, sweet, no dramas. But we were having all these relays burn out in our controllers. We were wondering what's going on. And it wasn't an isolated incident. It was happening in 2 or 3, applications. And when we looked into it, we found that even though the running power that they advertised on our ozone generators that we now get built for us to our specifications were well below the amperage rating, the startup amps and volts were hugely exceeding the capacity of the relay. So then we started wiring to a dry contact, which is a voltage-free contact. So essentially the ozone generator stays on all the time, but the dry contact tells it when to start producing ozone and when to stop producing ozone. So you're not physically switching the ozone generator on and off. And that's for our units 5 grams or above. Our smaller units up to 500 milligrams, you can switch them on and off. That's no problem. 2.5 amp relay will handle that. They don't put out a hell of a lot of energy. So that might be a problem why you're doing it. Surging relay, they're, welding shut, essentially, or just failing. So if you need 4 systems up to 5,000 litres in volume, my advice would be anywhere between sort of 750 milligrams and 1 gram per hour would be the size of ozone generator that I would put on a system like that on an LRP controller. Always use an air dryer. Our smaller units that are up to 500 milligrams per hour, and I'm actually getting those sized for oxygen feed as well, so that we can, if we want to, we can feed them on oxygen and get more ozone out of them. They can be used without a dryer, no dramas. The cell can be washed out, essentially, or you can just replace the cell after a couple of years. But will you get the advertised amount of ozone out of it? Almost certainly no. So you need to be careful when people say you don't need a dryer for it. You may not need a dryer for it. Our smaller ozone generators up to 500 milligrams don't need a dryer. But if you ask me will they produce the same amount of ozone without a dryer, I will say almost unequivocally no, they won't. Putting a dryer on them will guarantee to a certain point that you will get the stated production out of your ozone generator, and make sure that you keep moist, wet air out of your ozone generator. And we all know that electricity and moisture does not mix. And you're passing very high voltage electricity through an ozone cell, and it amazes me that people would want to skimp on something like that when they spend so much money on an ozone generator. Now, regenerative air dryers, I can understand. Regenerative air dryers, in most cases for those smaller ozone generators, are twice as much as the ozone generator itself. But there's nothing to say you can't put a desiccant air dryer with a colour changing media in it. That's what we do. We have a 1 micron filter and desiccant colour changing silica air dryer media combo thing. It's like essentially 2 water filter housings that we plumb up in reverse, essentially, so they flow the right way. We put a 1 micron filter in one side and we put desiccant media in the other, and flow in, flow out. We also get our ozone generators made with a positive air feed input so that you can pump air through them at the prescribed rate rather than drawing too much air through them on the Venturi. That's a problem as well. Drawing too much air through them is a problem. This definitely isn't a sales live stream, Trent, so I would be quite happy to give you prices on anything that you want if you shot me a private message or emailed me. You can get me at gareth@pureaquatics.com.au, or shoot me a message on Messenger, and I'll send myself an email to remind myself to get your price. So, using both ozone and UV together. This is very, very interesting. Now, you know how I was talking about using ozone to clarify the water and improving the performance of ozone generated UV sterilizers. Well, we always thought it was because it clarified the water that well that that the UV just worked so much better because the UVT was so much higher, the ultraviolet transmittance. Okay, we've come to notice that that's definitely a factor, but it's not necessarily the direct cause. If you put ozone, dissolved ozone through a UV, a germicidal UV that is at 254 nanometers, I think, UV dose average, is more useful for destructing and destroying ozone than it is for creating it. Like some people think UV creates ozone. Well, there are ozone generators that use UV, but it's a completely different wavelength. If you pass it through a germicidal UV that we use, it destructs the ozone. Now, that's something that we learned, something that we've been applying for a while. Then within probably the last 5 years, AOP, or advanced oxidation process, has become very popular in wastewater, and that is using UV to destruct ozone, or using hydrogen peroxide to destruct ozone, or using hydrogen peroxide and ozone passed through UV, and that creates what is known as hydroxyl radicals. Now, hydroxyl radicals have an even higher oxidative potential than ozone itself. That has an incredible ability to target and destroy waste products, pathogens, anything like that, and is, as far as anyone knows, relatively safe at high levels. So the hydroxyl radical production is definitely an advantage with applying ozone and UV together. Now, would I recommend that you go plumbing a UV on the outlet of your skimmer that you're feeding ozone into? No, I would not. There again is a lot of nuanced sizing and engineering and design work that needs to go into an AOP system, and they cost a lot. And you can put them together by sizing the right equipment, but I'd never recommend that you try and create one at home. You might just create more problems for yourself. But yes. Okay. Can you guys excuse me for just 1 second? Sorry about that, guys. Nightly dad duties. Okay, so, but the production of those hydroxyl radicals as a very happy byproduct of applying both UV and ozone together is, something that can work to your advantage. So I always recommend that you, if at all possible, if you can use UV and ozone together, go and do it. Anya. Great to see you again. I'm expecting some interesting questions from you. No pressure, but yeah, expecting some questions. So have a think. Okay, so that was a bit of an unexpected deep dive into UV and ozone. We sort of covered the filtration LSS thing a little bit there that we're going to cover after the probiotics live stream. But that was fun. Who else has got a question? And let's keep the bacterial questions until the live stream. Unless it's to do with biological filtration or something, but let's keep the bacterial and probiotic questions until the live stream, and that way everyone that's, you know, already said that they're going to come to that can really capitalise on that, because we're going to really deep dive into that when we get there and be able to get to the meat and potatoes of that sort of stuff when that comes around. Anya, I'm looking in your direction. I'm not seeing any questions. And where is Cam? Actually, that's what I want to know. You better be sitting beside you, watching this whole thing, or I'll be having words next time I see him. Let me just scroll back through the feed and see if there is anything that anyone has asked that I have missed. Badger, you still haven't said hello. I don't know if you're still here because the stream doesn't tell me who's in the stream. I think the next stream that we'll be doing on YouTube. And that way I can put it on my channel. I don't have any videos on my channel at the moment, but I can put it on my channel. That way we can sort of post it to the group. And yeah, it's a little bit more interactive and yeah, a little bit easier to use. Okay, so while I'm waiting for more questions, one thing that I wanted to cover was incoming water pre-treatment for shop systems. So with saltwater, a lot of you guys use RO. If you're using natural seawater, you use RO for your top up, or you use RO for your synthetic salt production and mixing. I am absolutely gobsmacked by the amount of people who don't use water filtration on their freshwater for their freshwater species in their freshwater stores. Now, there has been time and time again examples of people that simply just put a carbon filter on their incoming water instead of using water ager. A drop of 50 to 80% in their death rates and losses by making that one change. The carbon pulls out more than just chlorine. And you've got to remember that when you put another chemical in the water to treat a chemical, there's all these byproducts that get produced. Now, the majority of dechlorinators on the market today are made up of two different chemicals. One is sodium thiosulfate, which for all intents and purposes is pretty harmless. The process that it goes through to detoxify chlorine is pretty harmless as well, but you still got stuff floating around in the water, and it's not great. The other one is sodium formaldehyde bisulfate, or bisulfite, some people will call it, depending on the country that they're from. And yes, it has formaldehyde in it, and yes, it does have an effect on different chemicals within the water. Ammonia and chlorine and chloramine, it will all detoxify, as well as heavy metals. Unless heavy metals are a huge problem at excessive levels within your water that you're using within your shop, my argument would be if you're only doing a 10% water change each day, that would probably become biologically assimilated, unless of course it's zinc. If you've got a problem with zinc, you need to sort that out. Zinc is incredibly toxic, even in small doses, very, very, very small doses, and I'm talking like 0.001 parts per million. It's ridiculous how toxic that stuff is. A very, very simple water treatment system could be, a dual 10-inch cartridge, one with a 1 micron pre-filter and one with a 0.5 micron carbon block filter running into your store. And, you can run that at about 2 litres a minute. You know, invest in a water storage tank or 2 water storage tanks that you can have on float switches, that the float valves that turn it on and off. Put a pressure actuated solenoid valve on it so that it turns it on and off, and just tops it up on demand maybe. Switch from one to the other. If you want to get a little bit more in depth, you can treat with chemicals that are just general hardness and carbonate hardness after that. But the benefits of treating just with carbon of water coming into your store for your fresh water is massive. I know people that even on their RO units that they'll put a 1 micron pre-filter and a 0.5 micron carbon post-filter on it to take out the bulk of the shit in their water before it hits their RO unit. Huge benefits, massive benefits. If you change 5 of those out a year, you might be looking at, I don't know, $60, $70 for the carbon block, and that's 0.5 micron. That's very, very fine. Maybe $20 for the 1 micron polyspun pre-filter. How much do you spend on water changes every year? Water ager every year. Some people get it for free through certain companies at reward programs and stuff. That's fine. That's great. But arguably, dropping your death rates, how much money are you going to save? Not how much money are you going to save, how much better is your bottom line going to get? That's the other thing. So, you know, think about it. It's an easy upgrade to do, and you can automate it so that you don't have to use water ager, and like it's really a huge benefit. And very easy to do, very accessible, very easy to size, very easy to work out what sort of size you need. In my opinion, it's a no-brainer. So if you've got a freshwater store, I would definitely recommend, you know, even a saltwater store, but arguably you're already using RO, but a freshwater store, I would definitely recommend that you put, at the very least, a granulated carbon cartridge or even a sand filter with carbon in it. Ideally, you would want to put in, like I said, a 0.5 micron carbon block filter cartridge that follows a 1 micron or a 5 micron polyspun pre-filter, and that's going to take the sediment and crap out of your water, as well as then pass through your carbon and take that out. And that's going to take out cysts and all sorts of stuff that's going to come in your fresh water too. And just because your water's chlorinated doesn't mean it doesn't have bacteria and parasites in it. Yeah, it reduces it. It reduces it so that it's safe for us to drink. Chlorine, consequently, ironically, isn't that great for us to drink. But lesser of two evils, right? Either get that or, you know, cryptosporidium or giardia or something, you know, outrageous like that. You know, yeah. Carbon filter your incoming water. I can attest to its effectiveness. It's good gear. Any downside to a carbon pre-filter? No. No, not really. The only downside would be is if your municipality uses chloramine, so chlorine bonded with ammonia gas. If you remove the chlorine from that compound, it will release ammonia, and if it's in high enough levels and you're doing high enough water change and you haven't got a good enough biological filter to suck that up really quickly, you could see a little bit of an ammonia spike. Now, in a store, you should be replacing regularly smaller amounts of water that is going to not result in an ammonia spike. And look, if you've got ammonia coming out the back end of that carbon cartridge, grab another cartridge, the refillable cartridge, and fill it with zeolite. It's pretty simple. I would rather use absorption filtration than use something that's going to bind it and leave it in the water. So that's my 2 cents. And I've done it time and time again, and it works really bloody well. We've got a system design that we put in for salmon hatcheries, like salmon egg incubation systems. that because of the very low temperature, biological filtration does not work. So we use a big old sand filter filled with high capacity zeolite and another big old sand filter of the same size, chock-a-block full of activated carbon. And it works superbly. And that's on a recirculating aquaculture system hatching eggs. So if it's going to do that in a biologically active, low temperature, high value commodity system, imagine what it's going to do for your neon tetras, you know, on the water coming in. Alan, I expect interaction and banter from you this live stream. Throw some questions at me, sir. I always know you've got hairy questions for me. Josiah, good to see you. Thank you for dropping in. Hope your week's been good. Hope you haven't been too busy. Hope the airlines have been cooperating with you. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Anything of what I do day to day? Anything of how I got into this industry? Any questions on anything to do with me? This is an anything stream, guys. It doesn't even have to be to do with fish. I mean, it could be to do with your shop and product choice. It could be to do with... I don't want to get into brand selection, but, you know, I'm happy to give pros and cons of different brands and where they fit into the market, as best as I can, anyway. Anything, guys. Shoot questions at me. Yeah. I hope you've been well, Alan, and the family. I hope the family's been well. I see the old man's been trekking around and doing a lot of work with honey perch and stuff. It's fantastic. Where am I based now? Sleepy old Warhope again, Trent. I moved from Warhope down to Newcastle. I worked at Hunter Pets in Newcastle for, God, how long did I work there for? 3-4 years? Then bounced around a bit, moved to the Central Coast, worked in Sydney, and then come back to Warhope and started working in aquaculture again. Worked for Fresh by Design for 3-4 years. And then Fresh by Design moved back to Mossvale. So Lindsay and Ron, who I work with, started Pure Aquatics and they brought me on board. And that's Pure Aquatics for the last 2.5 years. Yeah. So, what do you mean, what do you mean? All the aquaculture in Australia happens in Warhope because, you know, we tend to stick around Warhope. And it's a beautiful place to live. It's a beautiful place to raise a family. All mine and my fiance's family is from here originally. We've got deep roots here. It's a good little town. Good little town. Thanks, mate. Who else has got some questions? (8:25). We started very early. We've got an extra 3/4 of an hour ahead of us at the moment. So, you know, I'm expecting more people to start showing up at about 8:30. Anya, I still haven't got a question from you. Hey, I want to ask a question. What beverage is everyone enjoying tonight? What is your favourite flavour of coralline algae? Oh, that's a hard one. Definitely the slightly brown or starting to bleach variety that comes from right underneath the bottom bit of live rock that's got all the sponge and the biofilm and the crap built up around it. You know, that with all the juicy, chewy, mucusy bits on it. That's my favourite. fresh H2O. Okay. Frozen into blocks, sitting in scotch, Kevin? Or just good old water. That's right, Alan. Yeah. I don't know, for anyone who knows Alan kind of started this crazy idea of selling live fish online, and then it kind of took off. It kind of took off really well. Yeah, the rest is history. Alan's been working in aquaculture for a long time. Worked with his father, Bruce Sample, at Aussie Fish, a fantastic Australian mainstay of the aquaculture industry. Yeah, it's really good. Thinking outside the box. That's what we got to do in this industry. Move with the times, think outside the box. I know it's a concept that a lot of people struggle to grasp, but moving with the times is how you stay alive. Oh, El Cab Sav. Ivan, I don't believe I know you. What store do you own? Do you own a store? How are you involved in the Australian aquatic industry? Oh, ran 12Ks, Kev. You're keen. I'll give you that. Having said that, I do need to get back into exercise. Need to get back into martial arts, actually. I'm starting back next week. Had to be a bit careful because of the Rona, you know, newborn baby and all that kind of thing. Yeah, but I've been a bit slack, so I do need to get back into that. I have been walking a lot, which is good. Sort of easing my way back into it. This doesn't help, though. So yeah, Ivan, where do I know you from? Do I know you at all? Distinctfinishes.com.au or distinctfishes.com.au? I don't understand. I'm sorry. I'm a bit daft. It is Friday. It's been a long week. So who have we got apart from the people that have been commenting? Who have we got in the stream? Shout out. I want to know who's here. I saw Mr. Hatfield from Reef Secrets pop in before. I don't know whether he's left yet, but are you still here? Darren? Are you still here, Anthony? Mr. Ramsey, are you still here? Come on, want some interaction. Let's painting and decorating and not fish as far as I can see. Well, Ivan, I'm assuming that you're interested in aquariums somehow, so welcome aboard. The more we learn, the more we grow. So, yeah, thanks very much for joining in. Who else have we got? Come on, guys. I know you've got questions. Don't be shy. The only silly question is a question not asked. Okay, so while I'm waiting for more questions, what's another subject I was going to talk about? General hardness, actually, is a good one for freshwater. Fish have a certain hydrated salt versus unhydrated salt. Oh, look, that's even better. Oh no, Ivan, look, welcome. No, that is. I don't think that's what Kevin was saying at all. I think he was just answering my. I think he was just answering my question of, are you involved in the industry as a supplier or retailer rather than a hobbyist or someone that's interested in aquatics. By all means, if you want to join in, even if you don't know anything about aquatics, the more people that we can get to engage in this sort of thing, really, the better. So by all means, I don't think he meant that at all. I know he wouldn't have meant that at all, knowing Kevin. So yes, please don't take that offensively. I'm very happy that here we all are. So yes, please stay. Hydrated salt versus unhydrated salt. I'm assuming that you're referring to synthetic sea salt. Now, you will also hear it referred to as hydrous versus anhydrous salt. Now, if you take an anhydrous salt, and I'll pick one out that I know very well, Brightwell Aquatics Neomarine, that takes 36 grams of salt per litre to reach a 35 part per thousand salinity level. 37 or 38. Other unhydrated salts take up to 40. Now, if you take the difference within those two, and assuming that anhydrous salt will still have some level of moisture in it, however minute, if you take that level of salt in parts per thousand, convert it to parts per million per litre, that is how much water you're putting into your aquarium. Now, we all know how these sort of salts are mined or produced either by solar evaporation in ponds or mined out of the earth and refined. If they're hydrated and not anhydrous, which means they've had all the water taken out of them, more refined, more purified, Brightwell Aquatics, for one example, I know Seachem Salinity is also an anhydrous salt. They take higher grade, technical grade, USP grade, reagent grade, other portions of their mix, which have less impurities in them. Now, when you have water in a chemical, that alone means it is arguably less refined. And depending on the processing of that individual raw chemical, take, for instance, sodium chloride. Sodium chloride, in a lot of cases, is either evaporated from inland saline waters or ocean water in ponds, in the open air, where you've got dust and all sorts of stuff that can blow in. Now, the salt is washed, yes. It is sorted and graded, yes. But along with that water, you have organics and different sorts of contaminants that come across with it. So if you work out, so let's do a quick calculation here. Let's say that I'm going to pick, these aren't necessarily the numbers, these are just the numbers that I'm kind of remembering. Say it's 38 grams of salt per litre of water for Brightwell Aquatics Neomarine, and that produces a salinity of 35 parts per thousand. Okay? That's 3 parts per thousand of water. I don't think it's anywhere near that broad. I think it's a lot less than that. But let's say it's 3 parts per thousand. Or 3,000 milligrams per litre. No. Yes. Let's hold on. It's late, guys. I can't math very well. Parts per thousand. It's a factor of 1,000. I can't believe I cannot believe I am actually Googling this. Don't judge me. Okay, so 3 parts per thousand is... Yeah, that's not right. I'll get to that in a minute. Oh, God. Okay. Okay, open. Here we go. Right. So, yes, 1 part per thousand is 1,000 parts per million. Right, so you have 3,000 milligrams of stuff in an anhydrous mix, and that's just using the random numbers that I just pulled out of thin air. That you're going to be putting 3,000 milligrams that you're going to be putting into your aquarium of water, okay? And that's per litre, because you're using that amount of salt per litre of water to produce your salt water, right? So that's 3,000 milligrams per litre, okay? That is water. If even 1% of that is organics or nitrate or phosphate or all of the above, that is 30 parts per million of crud, you know, theoretically, that you are going to be putting into your tank. Okay? You then take a hydrated salt mix that might need, you know, 42 grams of salt per litre of water that to reach 35 parts per thousand. So if we go 42 minus 35, that's, what the hell? 42 minus 35. 7, so 7,000 parts per million. And we times that by 0.01. That is 70 parts per million. Now, I can tell you the difference is a lot more than that. And then you have to ask yourself that an anhydrous salt mix is going to use higher purity ingredients, which means the amount of organics that come over with the water that's actually in them will be a lot less, if there is any water at all, because, you know, you're not going to get 35.5 parts per thousand that's going to match salt water by adding a salt mix that has sodium chloride as well as calcium chloride as well as magnesium sulfate as well as all the other things in it. But in a hydrated salt mix, you're going to have a shit ton of water comparatively at arguably a less pure product that could bring organics over with it. As well as you don't use as much salt, and in the long run you're better off, as well as the product can be arguably more stable and higher purity. That's my argument, based solely on organics. But then you've got purity and you've got mixing and you've got quality to attest for. Now, out of all of the salt mixes that I have ever used, and I could say I've probably used 10 or 20 different salt mixes, I have to say that Seachem Salinity and Brightwell Neo Marine, and I have not used Continuum Salt, but Salinity and Brightwell Neo Marine are probably two of the best that I've used. And you know what? Both of them are anhydrous salt mixes. That's my argument. Not naming brands, but have experienced this level of rubbish. As in the salt mixes? Yeah, probably. And some are just terrible. Some of the Chinese ones that are really cheap, that have been distributed in Australia in the past, that, oh yeah, they're great, we're only using them for our fish systems, yeah, sure, we'll just use that. I've pulled shoelaces out of the bags. Honest to God, shoelaces. And when I look at it, these guys are mixing the salt in a cement mixer out the front, in the rain, in front of the factory in China, using a dirty cement shovel. Shoveling it off the floor, off the concrete outside. Be careful who you buy salt from. Options for testing DO. You can use a reagent-based test kit, although arguably it would be a lot more unreliable than an electronic monitor. If you want to test DO reliably, I would use an electronic monitor. There are many different types. There's polarographic-based probes, there's galvanic-based probes, there's continuous monitoring that you can use on continuous, recirculating monitors like the Apex or the YSI 5200 or an OxyGuard or whatever it might be. Or there's handhelds that you can use to spot check. Now, honestly, you've probably got a lot of systems, Paul, that you're thinking about testing DO in, and I would just get a handheld. For a run-of-the-mill handheld that you're looking at for just a replacement membrane-based oxygen probe, you might be running yourself about $800, $900, something like that. They're not cheap, but aquaculture farmers, it's a no-brainer. You have DO drop in a pond and you lose 30 tonne of fish. It's a lot more expensive than $800, It wasn't cheap. Look, not to fuel gossip or anything, but if you wanted to private message me what the name of that is, I'd be interested to know, because a lot of our customers use synthetic salt for salt water. Oh God, what's it called? Testing their ability for their salmon smolt to transition from freshwater to saltwater, instantly, pretty much. They set up small systems and do it that way. So I'd be interested to know if you wanted to. Won't pass any further from what you tell me. Cheap salt is cheap salt. Surprise, yeah. Be aware of companies that are not transparent with salt. Be aware of people that say they mix and manufacture their own salt, but they don't want to show you their manufacturing facility. You'll see companies thinking outside the box and cutting new cloth, and then you'll see companies that tend to use ideas and marketing of other companies to sort of ride that wave. Just be diligent. Be a little bit, savvy about your salt mixes. It's literally the lifeblood of your marine aquarium system. If you're using that, natural salt water is another thing altogether. We all know it depends on where you collect it from, how you treat it when it's going into your storage tank, all that kind of thing. What's my take on Aquaforest? I have to tell you, for the salt trials that a lot of our customers do for salmon smolt, we've been selling them Aquaforest salt, and they think it's great. We sell it for commercial aquaculture purposes, where we have no interest at all in selling it to the aquarium industry. But it's available in large quantities. It's a relatively good price, and it's a very good product. Aquaforest do their due diligence. Oh my God, it's been a long week. Sorry. They do their homework. That's a little bit easier to say at Friday at 8:45 of the night. They do their homework. They cut new cloth. Look, Aquaforest is popular for a reason, and that's because it does a good job. It makes a certain price point, and it does a very good job at that price point. It does an exceedingly fantastic job at the price point that it is. Probably, in my opinion, and I haven't used a lot of Aquaforest stuff, but probably in my opinion, one of the best bang for buck brands around. And I'm just saying that. I'm not even saying that from personal experience. I'm just saying that from what I see from a product comparison and a product evaluation point of view, which I used to do a lot of, and seeing its popularity within the industry. Yeah, it's good. Oh, look, if I'm being honest, that was a really shit day for our industry. You know, as Mr. Bailey would say, calling a spade, it was a really shit ass day for our industry. I know a lot of you guys, like me, knew who it was, and it was very, very sad to see that. Yeah, let's leave that there. That was just shit. Really, to be entirely honest, it was just crap. Yeah, so do I, man. So do I. Yeah, that was a goddamn fucking tragedy. That was. Sorry for swearing, but it was. It was, yeah, stupid, just stupid. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, Trent. Look, better quality control. Oh, I don't know, man. I'm still on the fence. Both have their pros and cons for me. If it's biosecurity that you're talking about, and I'm all about biosecurity, being in the aquaculture industry, synthetic salt water that's been mixed with RO water all the way will give you ultimate control. When you're talking about price point versus control, as long as you treat it properly, and a lot of aquaculture facilities will pump it through a 1 micron filter bag after it goes through a sand filter, of course, and then they'll either treat it with UV or with high levels of ozone or both. We're talking about facilities that are doing lobsters and, you know, high value aquaculture species and stuff. Look, you know, better quality control, unless you're doing that and treating it, my argument would be there is absolutely no way that you know what's in that water. You know what's in RO water because you can test it. And you know what's in synthetic salt if it's a good brand because they provide ICP tests and testing on it and certain guarantees. And if it's not up to scratch, you can tell them and they'll fix it. You can't tell the ocean to go and pull their socks up. So, look, I see the advantages of natural salt water. I see the food advantages. I see the trace element advantages. I see the other advantages in different sorts of stuff. But quality control, yeah, both have their pros and cons. They make different, you know, different needs, I suppose you would say. Obviously, weather and runoff dependent, yeah, as well as boat traffic, as well as coral spawning events, as well as sea levels, surf levels, tides, movements of sandbars, all that kind of thing. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm a big fan of control and a big fan of data. So if I can control that level, which is the backbone of the aquarium or the aquaculture system, in my experience, in my current industry, I will endeavour to do that if I can. If it's economical to do so. If not, I'll collect natural salt water and I'll ozonate the absolute living tap dancing bejesus out of it. So, yeah, take with that what you will. Adam, great to see you, man. Haven't seen you in a while. Hope the job's treating you well. No Vectra L2s though. Put me in a bit of a sticky spot when you got bloody short supplied with them. Couldn't put them on me fracs, but that's not the problem. It's, I think Jess helped me out with that and let me know straight away that they weren't available, so that was good. But yeah, otherwise, hope the job's going well. Hope you're having fun. Paul and Ellie, $1 billion of what? Like seized product. I didn't think it was that big, but it was that long ago, and there's been a lot of schooners in between then and now, so. Where's my next question coming from? I'll start back on my GH rant while I'm waiting for the next question. General hardness, concentration of dissolved salts and minerals in fresh water. Oh, God. Adam, where's your question? If you're going to be here, you have to ask a serious question that is that's going to create some discussion. So ask away. Think about it. GH, dissolved salts and minerals in freshwater. Fish have, obviously, as everything does, a requirement for salts and minerals within their body. And to osmoregulate properly, not only does the pH have to be correct, but the salts and minerals within their body have to be regulated within their body so that they're not losing that to the outside environment, which is the water. Right? If your dissolved salts and minerals in your water are low or not at levels that the fish are used to, or adequate for fish metabolism and cellular respiration within those fish, your fish are going to suffer because they're going to have to increase their osmoregulation to regulate those amount of salts and minerals, which, if it's in relatively pure water, arguably they're only going to be getting from their food. So, depending on the species, I would always recommend that you maintain at least a low hardness within your water and monitor that. Hardness can be, hardness is what they say is the measurement of dissolved calcium and magnesium. When you're talking about conductivity, which is a more in-depth reading of the dissolved salts and minerals in your system, that could be sodium chloride, it could be calcium, it could be magnesium, it could be potassium, it could be strontium, it could be manganese, it could be any of these other things. Conditioning salts that are sold into freshwater systems are not snake oil. Some of them might be marketed to different spots, some of them might be coloured different colours for marketing. Consequently, some of those colours are actually prophylactic medications, which can be beneficial to your fish when you add them. They will, of course, disappear, but the residual salts and minerals will remain in the water. There is a reason that they produce arguably better results than water that doesn't have general hardness adjusted. Now, when I was working at Hunter Pets, running the fish room there, we started to make our own GH regulator out of calcium chloride, magnesium sulfate, and potassium chloride. And we noticed a huge difference in the health and well-being of our fish and the production and cleanliness of our water. We then added separately to that sodium chloride if we needed to do a salt bath, or a certain level of sodium chloride we used to add separately to the top-up tanks up top, and more if we needed to do a medical treatment of salt, or within the tanks if we needed to do a salt bath. And sometimes we used to even add very much higher levels of magnesium to treat internal parasites and help osmoregulation, especially with discus. Discus, yeah. Contrary to popular belief, discus really friggin' loves salt. If they've got, something bothering them, we used to, put like a kilo of salt in their water, which we would obviously drain out and do a big water change, but we just pour it in, and the bastards would come down and get in it and lay in it and scrub themselves in it. Like, yeah, so don't believe everything you hear. Use your head, If you only try it once, that means you've tried once and you've failed, and you won't do it again and you've learned something. If it works, hey, you've now got something else in your arsenal that you can use to help keep better quality fish. Paul Sand. Is a bare bottom tank worth having a shit looking tank? Speaking from a stability and microbiological point of view, I would probably not go with a bare bottom tank. Speaking from a coral respiration point of view, I've had nothing but trouble with bare bottom tanks. Essentially in shallow holding tanks that I used to run at Hunter Pets again. I used to notice with the bare bottom tanks that the corals, even though we were maintaining very low nutrient levels, that they would brown out really quickly. We put substrate in the tanks and they took 10 times longer to brown out. And look, a lot of it was, you know, the quality of the filtration and stability of the system and calcium and magnesium levels and all that kind of thing. But, and I've learned a lot since then about corals, but I digress. My theory was that on the bottom of the tank it was glass, underneath that glass it was white foam. Okay, even if it wasn't white foam, underneath it was glass. The reflection of that light was coming down, it was bouncing off the glass and coming back up, which was creating an overproduction of zooxanthellae, and essentially the corals were photosynthesizing themselves to death. In a nutshell. So, do I like bare bottom tanks from a metabolic, cellular respiration and microbiological point of view? No. Do bare bottom tanks look shit in my opinion? Look, I've seen some really good looking bare bottom tanks, but I love the look of substrate too, and you can really do some interesting things with scapes and substrate, you know, combined. Would I prefer a tank with substrate in it? Unequivocally, yes. Do I think it's practical in a store setting to have substrate even in your freshwater tanks? A thin layer of substrate, yes, something that you can stir up, get the waste into the water column and let the filtration rip it out. Thick layers of substrate, no. 6 and 1, half a dozen of the other, essentially. Didn't answer your question really, but maybe it did, I don't know. There's a lot of variables in that. Hello, Rob. How are you? How are you enjoying Monsoon Aquatics? I saw you chatting to a new member of your team with a fantastic moustache. I wish I could grow a moustache. But yeah. Good to see you doing good. Can you make a bare tank with frag racks look worse? I'd love to hear what your answer to that's going to be, Paul. What's my go-to medication? For what? What's my go-to medication for what? Chemotherapeutics. Okay, well, look, rattle them off the top of my head. Salt is fantastic. Works like hypersaline inhibitor in reverse. Essentially increases the amount of salt within the environment quickly enough that the organisms in question, you know, their salinity increases, and because they haven't got osmoregulatory, the osmoregulatory ability of the fish to regulate their internal salts and minerals, that it either weakens them or it kills them. It weakens them to the point where the fish can fight it off, or it weakens them to the point where any other chemotherapeutic is going to knock them off. So that is the first thing. Salt and Melifix for frayed fins or from recovering from columnaris or fin rot disease is a fantastic combination. Its usefulness in treating bacterial and fungal infections, very mild, yes. Starting, yes. As a bit of a tonic, yes. Not for severe cases in my experience. For fungal infections, it depends on the fungus. Good old methylene blue malachite green tends to work pretty well. Malachite green formalin tends to work fairly well for that too. There are some fin rot preparations coming out. There are some fungus preparations coming out that are better than others. Some of them use aquaflavin or other, you know, different sorts of chemicals in them. They're pretty good. Parasites, almost always a combination of formalin and copper, and I used to use straight 37% formalin and cupramide for freshwater and saltwater at various concentrations for the fish I was treating. I would use it either at very low doses or not at all with clown loaches. What would be my all-time go-to medication before I try any chemotherapeutic? Hydrogen peroxide or sodium percarbonate or solid hydrogen peroxide. It has no residuals. Most of your bacteria and biofilter, as long as you are careful with your dosing and stay within limits for the species and for the water volume. Most of your bacteria will survive. They have peroxide reductus enzymes in the majority of them that allow them to withstand a certain amount of peroxide in the water. Used very widely in aquaculture. I've seen it work too many times for it not to be my all-time favourite medication before I go to other harsher treatments. Yeah. Good to hear, Rob. Good to hear you're loving life, man. Hope the family and the kids are well. Only the legends call their kids William, you know. Hey, John. Good to see you again, man. Commercial chillers from Allen for 10,000 litre systems. Can you get spa and pool heater chillers at prices close to 1 to 2,000? Is there aquaculture specific units? Okay. Close to 1 to 2,000. Nothing really below your 9 kilowatt sort of size. Generally, those 8 to 9 kilowatt sizes are heat only. Your heat to chill units usually bumping at around 11 to 13 kilowatts heat capacity. That's nominal. That's the problem with heat chill units and chillers in general is that they are an evaporative process. So they are highly dependent on the ambient temperature and your target temperature of the water, as well as outside influences like heat losses and etc. The reason immersion heaters work so good is because they're an inductive heating system, and kilowatts in equals kilowatts out, essentially. There's very little losses, whereas chillers are heated chiller units are highly dependent on the environmental factors that they're put in. One heat chill unit for an application that's maintaining a temperature at 25 degrees can be completely inadequate even the next suburb over for exactly the same water volume, keeping exactly the same fish at exactly the same temperature. Hell, the systems can be identical, but one heated chiller unit might not work the same. The same model heated chiller unit might not work the same even a suburb over. And it even comes into contact with microclimate, like if it's up against a wall, or if it gets afternoon sun, or if the pipes are insulated, or what material the tanks are made out of, or what amount of surface area is there on the tanks. Is it inside? Is it outside? Is it in an insulated room? It's an absolute headache. And for that reason, we get heat chill unit manufacturers to size our units for us. Is there a aquaculture specific one? No, there isn't. There are ones that are rated for aquaculture. A lot of the pool units are definitely suitable for aquaculture. You need a heat chill unit supplier that understands your requirements, and then an aquaculture supplier like such as us, who understands what the requirements are, then need to seek out a heat chill unit provider that understands what we need for our customer. For $1,000 to $2,000, depending on what size the system is, well, look, $1,000 to $2,000, I'll tell you right now, you're not gonna get even a 10 kilowatt unit for $1,000 to $2,000. You wouldn't get it for. You definitely wouldn't get it for $2,000. You probably wouldn't get it for under $4,000. Just off the top of my skull. For a 10,000 litre system, I would ask you, where is it? What temperature do you want to maintain? And I would get that sized for you to see whether it's economically viable for you to heat and or chill, or whether you even require chilling or require heating. And then we could work from there, essentially. It's a bloody hard question to answer. And that's why we rely on experts within the field to assist us in delivering solutions for customers. So I don't have the answer for you. I can definitely say it'll cost more than $2,000. Peroxide bath tips. Do your research. Know what species you're bathing. make sure it's clean water that you're bathing in. Make sure that you mix the peroxide in evenly before adding the fish, and sit there and watch the fish for signs of stress. If you are at all worried about the well-being of the fish in regards to its behaviour, pull it out. Bathing tips, they're the bathing tips. I'm assuming you mean static bath. So you know, you might bathe them for 30 seconds, you might bathe them for 10 minutes, depending on the species, depending on the concentration, depending on the problem. I like your most recent question. We'll get into that, mate. I think we went into that in the last live stream, actually. Pathogen-free tanks. Anyway, I digress. I'm getting distracted. Did you get the Paul? Did you get the paper that we were talking about that Kevin posted up a couple of links to? University of Florida. Static baths versus continuous baths. I would be, unless it's an incredibly high concentration with species of fish in it that don't tolerate peroxide, I would probably recommend starting with a low dose and working your way up and bathing the entire system, because you're going to have some organics in there that are going to act as a safety net, essentially, to the peroxide overdose factor that you may encounter. Water movement for a 180,000 litre pond. Okay, so you've got the 180,000 litre pond. I'm assuming that you've sized the filtration to result in the turnover of every 3 to 4 hours of the system. If you're noticing static dead spots within the pond, I would very heavily lean towards strategically placed diffused aeration placed on the bottom of the pond. That will create upwelling within the system, that will circulate the water, circulate dead water from the bottom to the top. It'll circulate oxygen from the top down to the bottom so that the sediment can be broken down by the microbial herd within the system. It will change the biology in the bottom sediments by making a more oxygen-rich environment and allowing that waste to be broken down. A lot of people will even put them on top of or near bottom drains so that it physically draws the waste towards the bottom drain by the convection current that it creates. As the air is floating up, it's dragging water with it. Diffused aeration, I'm a big fan. Yeah, that's what I would lean to. And that's not necessarily, you know, circular circulation, it's just circulation in general. So the reality of a pathogen-free tank, it's not a reality, it's a fallacy. It's a fantasy. You can't have a pathogen-free tank, I'm sorry. That's why I laugh with when there used to be some guys around that said, you know, we've got certified disease-free goldfish. No, you don't. There is absolutely no way that you can guarantee that unless you're growing them in completely sterile water inside a vacuum. Inside the vacuum of space. There's absolutely no way that you can guarantee that you have no pathogens in your system. Can't. I'm sorry. Can't. It's a fallacy. It's an absolute fantasy. Yeah. My question would be, Alan, did you require a sizing for a heat chill pump? I can help you out with it. Email me. Hey, Chris. How you going, man? I don't know if Noriko's with you, but if she is, hi, Noriko. Hi, kids. Hope you had a good week. Hope you're having a beer. Yeah, specific pathogen-free, yes. But then again, maybe. Maybe not. Are you testing for it? You know, just because someone says that they quarantine all their fish and so they've got no disease in their tank, have you done a microbiological assay of your entire environment? Have you done skin and gill scrapings of sampling of all your fish? Have you taken substrate out and examined it under a microscope? Have you examined every single coral, every single crevice of live rock? No. I had a guy, and I went over this in the last live stream. I had a guy who had a 20-year-old 3x3x3 aquarium, marine aquarium. The last fish he put in it was 1991, I think. Or 2011 or something, 2007 or something ridiculous like that. Hadn't put a coral in, hadn't put a fish in, had dipped and quarantined all his coral, dipped and quarantined all his fish, started with dead rock, started with dry, bleached, dead rock and sand, started it all up from scratch with RO water and artificial salt water, mixing up synthetic salt water. Everything was sterile when it went in. He quarantined everything for 8 to 12 weeks. He was incredibly careful. Never had a problem. His last fish went in, 5, 6, 8 years prior to this event that he had, where one of his heaters shat itself, and he didn't realise until his fish started getting lethargic, and then they broke out with disease. His temperature in the middle of winter dropped to, 12, 13 degrees. And he got white spot. No fish had gone in, artificial salt water, all the things that I just said. Fish had never got white spot before, and these people are just like, oh, well, if the white spot doesn't have a host, then it'll die off. It can't live in the substrate. Where did this white spot come from? Was he just mistaking it? One of his kids were coming in and grinding up salt on top of all of his fish and, getting the clag glue stick and putting it all over his fish before he come and looked at the tank? No, no. You can never be too careful. You can never have enough biosecurity measures on your tank, and you can never be too diligent about your fish. It's not a reality to expect that you will never get disease. It's not. Disease is something that aquaculture farmers live with. Unfortunately, there is a certain amount of loss that these guys expect, as with any farming enterprise. Sheep, cattle, I'm sure some of my farms go in as somewhere, Yeah, I agree, Kevin. Testing is 100%. Fomites, please explain, Kevin. I'm not familiar with that term. Learn me, sir. Learn me. You are probably a lot more versed in that than I am, being involved in MACNA. So, oh, great. Yeah. Hi, Noriko. Chris, did you have a question? I hope everyone's doing well tonight. We have 13 people in the room, as far as I can see from what my screen's telling me. And I've got a handful of people commenting. Who else is watching? Come on, get involved, guys. If you disagree with me, please say so. If you have a question, please say so. If you have another point of view, please say so. I would love to discuss it. We're here to learn. We're here to have fun. Is an inanimate object that, when contaminated with or exposed to infectious agents, can transfer disease to a new host? Yeah, okay, yeah, great. Yes. Okay, so you're agreeing with me? I'm thinking that, and that is a fantastic explanation. The more you know. Has my wife hit the shelf at the front? No, she hasn't. No, she's very good. My ute would not fit in here, hence why this side of the shed is the brew house. So I have all my fermenters and stuff, and you can see the kegs up there, and yeah, this is my side of the shed where my car would go, but I'm happy for my car to live outside because my beer is more important than my car. Is it true that Kevin has a custom-made pillow that allows him to sleep in a hat? If he doesn't, he needs to get one, because I'll be disappointed if he doesn't sleep in a hat. Game up, Kev. You haven't. Yeah, seriously. Oh, John, you've been out to dinner. Yeah, I actually had leftover lasagna, and it was even better than it was last night. Yeah, Gemma cooks a wicked lasagna. Just, if any of you's ever come to visit, ask for lasagna. It's awesome. All it takes is 1 drop of aerosolized water to transfer the disease. Correct. That is how the white spot syndrome virus on the prawn farm spread so rapidly. It got onto one farm, and then the paddle wheels and wind drift carried it from farm to farm. Obviously, it was in the river system too, but that's how it spread so quickly between ponds and between farms, was wind drift as well. Running from the paddle wheel aerators, throwing water up in the air. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, consequently, she does have vested interest in that part of the shed because all of the wetting stuff in those clear boxes over there is right in front of her car. So if she hits that, oh, and of course all the empty, Cooper's long necks that I use to bottle the end of the keg run are up there too. She wouldn't want them falling on the car, so she has. There's a reason she doesn't hit it and is very careful about it. Yeah, and she loves the car too. No worries, Trent. Are you heading off? That is a great dinner, John. That is a cracker of a dinner. Man, I feel a little bit jelly now. I might have to pour myself a glass of whiskey. I hope you're having a scotch. Koi herpes in Australia now, has been for ages, Paul. Contrary to popular belief, has been for ages. And you know what? Koi herpes virus, very easily treated with UV. I'll tell you exactly what it takes to treat Koi herpes virus with UV, actually. Just stand by. Koi herpes virus takes 4 millijoules to treat with UV, less than it takes to kill algae, less than it takes to kill a lot of different bacteria. If you're treating your water with 30 millijoules, which is the minimum amount recommended for algae and bacteria, you'll kill Koi herpes virus. Very easy to kill. Not yet. Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you for the kind words. Trent, it's appreciated, mate. And we do need to catch up soon. Look, I'm hoping it's, and again, thank you very much to Paul and by proxy to John Bailey as well, who Paul has started this group in, because of John's original vision for this industry. Thank you very much. They, reinvigorated my passion for the industry more so than it already was. And I'm hoping to be able to attend more industry events just as a, as me, not on behalf of Pure Aquatics at all. Aquariums isn't really our focus. The aquarium industry, although we do help a lot of people within the aquarium industry designing, systems for holding fish or ponds, or even just diagnosing problems over the phone, helping them with water quality issues and things like that. But it's not entirely our focus at all. Our focus is recirculating aquaculture systems and hatcheries and stuff like that. So I do hope to attend more industry events. So yeah, look, Trent, next time you're heading off, use the page or message me if you're heading to an industry event. And me and Chris and Paul Talbot usually hang. You know, if wherever they are, if I'm there, I'm likely to be close by. So yeah, it'd be great to catch up. You thought what was canned? You thought the live stream was canned? No, I'd never do that. On to your next bottle. Fantastic, John. Chris, okay, if a tank of clown loaches breaks out with white spot and it clears up, would you feel confident to add more stock of clown loaches 1 week after they have been cleared? No. Because clown loaches are the Backstreet Boys of the aquarium fish world. They're a scaleless fish. You can't treat them with a lot. They might have cleared up, but their immune systems take a long time to bounce back. And the risk of adding more clown loaches that potentially have disease, even if it's not white spot, is high. I would recommend getting water quality correct, getting the immune system of the fish up and functioning at a very high level before adding any more fish. James, man, so good to see you. So good, so good to have you here, dude. I hope you're doing really well. It's been so long since we've talked. That tank is looking awesome. Is that the same tank that, like the ADA tank that, you know, we sort of set up for you back a while ago? Because it's looking sweet, dude. Hope you're doing well. Again, we should catch up. Even if you just want to drop me an email at Pure Aquatics, I'd be keen for a chat just to, you know, see what's new. Even a private message, man. A group drive to Cairns. All right, who's driving? Let's set it up for next weekend. Well, we can't because of the Rona. But once the Rona's cleared, yeah, hey, we could do... Oh! How's this for an idea? We could get a bunch of us, drive to Cairns, on the way, do an aquarium crawl on there, film it, do like a road trip review thing, you know, New South Wales to Queensland, ending in Cairns, go and see Triton, go and see Cairns Marine, see Monsoon while we're up there. That is a cracker of an idea. Yeah, I don't know who would be interested in that, but that would be awesome. But think of the exposure for our industry if it was just, you know, I mean, obviously it would be a complete shit show because, you know, we're an odd bunch. But it'd be fun. It'd be hilarious. It'd be great to meet up with everyone along the way, drop into all the stores on the way, do a road trip. Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Anyone who's interested, we should talk more. What would you treat them with? Oh, God. What would I treat clown loaches with? Probably a small level of salt. I would, although this is going to be finicky, probably move them to another tank and or system. I would ensure that UV would be on the system if at all possible. Trial a few, take a few out and give them a static bath in hydrogen peroxide and see how they handle it. I'm not sure how clown loaches handle hydrogen peroxide being a scaleless fish. Salt, what else did I used to treat them with? I used to treat them with formalin. I know a low level of formalin sometimes. Don't treat them with copper. It knocks the absolute shit out of them. Don't treat them with trichlorphon. That'll knock the absolute bejesus out of them too. They're a tricky one. Beautiful fish, I love them, but yeah, they're susceptible to disease more so than others. You'll be the Reef going to Reef HQ. What are the signs of alcohol? Oh my god! What are the signs that an axolotl is starting to morph? I'm not an expert in that. I'm not an expert in axolotls at all. I'm not the person to ask. Who knows a lot about axolotls that I could put you onto? I don't know. Voodoo and increased temps. That's a what's it called? What's that product? The fluid filter media. It escapes me. Matt, only down the road in Foster. Dude, you should come up and visit us in Warhope. I don't know where you work, but yeah, it'd be great to catch up and meet you. Morphing into a salamander. Yeah, stumped me. Easy Life. Yes, that's it. Easy Life Google. I haven't had anything to do with any of the Easy Life products apart from Easy Life. I can say that it's a fantastic product. Yeah, I've used it pretty extensively actually. So it's a good product. Fantastic to use with probiotic bacteria as a probiotic bacterial dosing schedule. Absolutely fantastic combination. Yeah, it's good stuff. That's that's my expert opinion. It's good stuff. But no, like it's obviously a clay-based product. Natural clays have been used for ages. Zeolite's a natural clay. A lot of these are called aluminosilicate molecular sieves. Kaolin's one, calcium bentonite, which is used a lot in koi ponds and what all the Japanese koi ponds are made of. That's why one of the reasons why they produce high quality koi, amongst others, genetics, breeding, food, care. But calcium bentonite's a good one. Kaolin, diatomaceous earth, all these sort of basaltic and aluminosilicate products that are made from molecular sieves have fantastic benefits for water filtration. They exchange ions, they suck certain things up, they remineralize the water, they do all sorts of awesome things. Oh yeah, look, I have, David, honestly, I have made a career out of being able to very effectively dribble shit. So, yeah, this is fun. I'm having a blast. So yeah, it's fun. Do you have any more questions, David? I enjoyed your question. We got a lot out of that, I think. More questions. Paul, I actually have a question for you, Paul. Do you still have a shirt on? Because, you know, I'm expecting you as the person who's going to do the nudie run. So, yeah. 100% wonder. Oh, coastal clownfish, right? Okay. Man, PM me. We should talk. I would love to come down for a visit. I've got a lot of family in Taree and Wingham, actually. Foster's like a hop, skip and a jump. So, yeah, I would love to come down for a visit. Matt, email me, gareth@pureaquatics.com.au, or PM me here, right-click on my name, send me a message, send me a friend request. I would love to catch up. I'd love to come and see what you do. I would like that a lot. We could even do like a vlog thingy where we do some stuff at your joint and put it up and, you know, do it for the industry type of thing and show everyone on the group, you know. FTR TV, I'm sorry, what's that? What's that, David? FTR TV, I'm not sure what that is. You're wearing a dress. Well, you know, it is Friday night. That does double your chance of getting a date, I suppose, Paul. So, you know, well done. Okay, John, no worries. Oh, well, if you've got to get another drink, are you going to be back or are you just going to bail on us? I'll do all the talking, Matt. Don't worry about that. No worries, John. I'll talk to you. I enjoy our talks. Keep in touch. Tim, Mr. Lamb. Hello, sir. How are you? Have not seen you in ages. Tim, if people don't know Tim, Tim actually used to be one of my customers at Hunter Pets. That's how long ago I know him from. He used to have a cracking SPS tank. Yeah. Pendy, questions? Do you have questions? Do you have any questions at all? At all? Throw them at me. It's 9:30. We've still got half an hour, and I'm powering. So you know, if people are keen to hang around, I'm keen to keep talking. All right, we'll have a think, Pendy. You know, anything to do with your aquarium. Okay, you've got a 500 milligram ozone generator. I don't know whether you've been here from the start and heard our talk about ozone at the start, but after the live stream is finished, I'd recommend that you go back and listen to that because that might answer a few of your questions, but I'm quite happy to answer your questions now. Okay, so you have a 1700 litre system. I'm assuming the 1700 litres is total water volume. Okay, well, 1700 litres, that 500 milligram will more than do that size tank. As long as you have an acceptable means of transferring that into the water via a protein skimmer or reactor, and you are controlling it. Make sure you're controlling it with an MRP controller. That is maintained and calibrated, I might add. Do you know what fractionator are you, what protein skimmer are you using? I've heard that actually, that the ORP on the Apex can't be calibrated, and I find that very odd because you can calibrate the pH, and pH and ORP use the same signal to transfer their data, and ORP calibration solutions are easily attainable. I don't know why RK2. Where did you get the RK2 protein skimmer from? Is that like one of those Xflow 2.5 or 3.5s? I believe I was talking to you over a year ago about one of the 5ACs. But are you using one of the smaller Xflow 2.5 or 3.5 units? just so everyone knows, RK2 have hobbyist level ones in 2.5 and 3.5, which, you know, stands for the gallons per minute rate. Generally speaking, they maintain about a 1 minute dwell time, which is low compared to their recommended 2 minutes, but is much higher than most of the dwell times in, you know, standard aquarium protein skimmers. And then the 5 and the 8 AC have a 2 minute dwell time rating, well, anywhere from a 1 to a 2 minute dwell time rating. And they're what they call a recirculating skimmer, so they have a separate supply pump and a dedicated venturi pump. You ended up with an 8C. Well, you didn't buy it from me. Oh, you must have bought it from Fresh by Design. That's okay. That's okay. I dare say that they probably had it in stock, whereas we didn't at the time. So that's all right. All I'm interested in is I'm happy that RK2 foam fractionators are in the country, and that you are using it. Are you enjoying the 8AC would be my question. Do you find it effective? Are you able to take a video of it in action and PM it to me? I would love to see it operating. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. You're still plumbing it in. So did you only recently purchase it? We've had an 8AC in stock for ages. Anyway, look, this isn't a sales thing, you know. Wherever you bought it, I don't mind. As long as RK2 is getting into the country and you're enjoying it and you got what you wanted, that's all I care about. So yeah, that's good. When you get it up and running, let me know. Who else has some questions? Serious questions, I might add, Paul. Yes, I'm looking at you. Serious questions. Although we are here to have fun, so please keep the banter coming. Got 12 people and still only a handful of people interacting. Who else is here? I can't see who is in the chat. I want to know. I want to know who's here. I want you to interact. I want, you know, I want you guys to feel comfortable with asking questions and getting involved. That's what these things are all about. Having fun, getting involved. Refractometers, what are the better ones? Look, refractometers are a dime a dozen. There are refractometers for beer, there's refractometers for testing the juice of fruits. They've been around for ages, not only for testing salinity in salt water. They've been around for the aquaculture industry. So, are there ones that are better than others? Yes. I have had experience with a lot of different ones. A lot of them are coming out of China. There's good ones coming out of China as well. Look, and this is in no way a plug, but the Red Sea refractometer, they've really done their homework on it, and they've adjusted it to be more accurate to the actual aquarium industry. And they're pretty well priced from when I looked at the prices when I was buying them at Hunter Pets, you know, however many years ago that was. Look, I've used it. I found it very reliable. Lasted a long time, good quality components. Yeah. And look, there's various others. I use the Serenity refractometer as well. I liked that one. Yeah, God, I used ones out of China. They were pretty good too. I've used ones out of America, which arguably were probably made in China. They were pretty good too. It's, you know, they're a dime a dozen. The Red Sea ones are good though, from what I've used. Um, any airlift only aquaculture in Australia with no mechanical water pumps? Are you talking about a full system operated only on airlifts? Or are you talking about water movement systems within a whole system that is using air to move water? I suppose is the question. Well, Paul, you need to come and talk to me about the digital salinity meter, because there's salinity meters and then there's salinity meters, and you do get what you pay for. So I can help you out. There's plenty of different options I can help you out with. Both or either. Okay. So there's a filter system that we distribute in Australia called the Polygeyser. The Polygeyser is an upflow bead filter that, with the endurance filters and then with the 3 cubic foot and the 6 cubic foot, can be operated on airlift. So airlift returning water to the tank, that's then using gravity and the suction of the airlift with the water that displaces it to suck the waste out of the tank and through the filter. Yeah. Airlift's very low difference in water level. We're talking, you probably don't want to exceed a difference in water level to injection point of any more than 6 inches. They can't really lift that much. Arguably, from the test that I've done, diffused air works a little bit better than slug flow. The plume of bubbles drags a lot more water with it. We use airlift pumps in tanks to increase circulation as well, to increase self-cleaning in tanks. Airlift systems can be used in ponds to de-stratify the water, as well as circulate water in place of or with paddle wheels. I'm a big fan of airlifts. I have a lot of sizing data that I can use to size airlifts. I've worked with them extensively over the past 10, 15 years. Yeah, they're around. They're not widespread, but they're around. They're gaining popularity. They're an excellent way to move water. They're an excellent way to oxygenate water, very low energy. They're really good technology as long as you know the limitations of it, as with anything. Oh, Chris, thanks for the kind words, man. Yeah, look, yeah, thanks very much. As I said, I'm having a blast, and I get satisfaction out of helping people and helping people to increase their knowledge base. So yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, but thank you very much for the kind words. We're all here to help each other, and we get nowhere without each other. So there were a few discussions on the page today that were talking about committees of industry bodies and the members of the industry bodies, and how we can work together, and how there's expectations for one or the other or anything like that. And you know what? Everyone's just got to kind of work together. We don't get anywhere unless we work together. And fleeing the proverbial poo at each other does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. So honestly, let's just all pull our big boy and big girl pants on and help each other and try and move this thing forward, because at the end of the day, the only way we're getting anywhere is together. And if division is created within the industry and within our group within the industry as suppliers, retailers, industry, promotion, information seminars like this, or anything else, if we're creating division and creating drama and just not going out of our way to work together, and more going out of our way to just cause, problems that don't need to be caused, then what's the point? Let's just work together. Let's pull our socks up and work together, guys. It's not that hard to be nice, and let's just try and get things moving. It's not hard. Please email your full price list, Paul. I've got a few options. It wouldn't be a full price list. It'd be a couple of options. Can you please send me an email to remind me that you want to talk about some salinity monitors? And I've got 2 or 3 options that I can throw at you with different, you know, features and stuff. It depends on whether you're going to be using it or your staff are going to be using it. A few different factors. Price point is another one. Yeah. Any thoughts on a hydroram to deliver air at depths to deep tanks without an air pump? A hydroram. That's the knowledge I have of hydroram is using either the flow from a stream or from a spring to create an artificial pressure within like a dual check valve type of arrangement that then pushes huge pressures at very low flows uphill. I'm actually toying with the idea of doing something similar with a portable one that I can chuck in streams when I go camping and have on tap water pumping up, so I don't have to walk down to the river all the time with buckets of water to get, you know, water for cups of tea and stuff. The idea of using a hydroram to deliver air to deep tanks without an air pump. Well, the hydroram wouldn't be delivering air, it would be delivering water. It would create circulation, which would arguably deliver oxygen to the deeper parts of the tanks. However, I think it would be a lot of infrastructure with arguably probably more energy use to do it in a tank application than just putting an air stone in and relying on the updraft and convection current to suck air from the bottom up to the top and create that convection. Pumping water is another thing that's energy hungry. I'm not sure of your theory behind that, Kevin, but it sounds interesting and you might be thinking of something different to what I'm thinking of. Shoot me an email. I'd be interested to talk it over. Or a PM, even. Show me what you're thinking of. It's interesting. It's an interesting concept. And this is what it's all about, you know, taking ideas and technology and adapting it to, you know, better a process. This is what we're all about here. So, oh look, Kevin, I'm not into building and selling. This isn't, you know, if it's something that will benefit people, sure. If it's simple, it'll be DIY before the end of the week. You know, but I'd be interested in the knowledge about it. So yeah. Anyone else got any questions? I'm still waiting to hear from these other people that are lurking in the background. I can't see who they are because my Facebook Live platform doesn't tell me who they are. Well, who's here? I want to know who's interacting. I want to say thank you. Interact, guys. It'd be fantastic to have you talking. Yeah. Anyone got another question? Encroaching on 2 hours and 40 minutes here, and I'm feeling like a spring chicken, guys. I could go for another half an hour yet. If anyone's got any more questions. It is getting late, though, so I understand if people want to start bailing, but we've still got 10 viewers and some pretty good interaction in the chat, so by all means, if people have got more questions, I'm happy to keep talking. Does anyone have any follow-up questions from the last live stream that they'd like more clarification on, maybe? Anything to do with water chemistry that maybe they missed the talk, or they were in it and they didn't quite understand or get it, or I didn't explain it well enough? If there's anyone that has any questions in regards to that. Oh, okay. Thoughts on the Australian government using KHV to wipe out koi carp in Australia, or carp in Australia? Okay, so if we go back, if we go back 10 years, something like that, there was a technology that was ready for release that had all the research done on it and had been proven, that was named the daughterless carp. They were changing the genetics and the way that carp passed on genes so that they only produced males, okay? They were able to replicate this technology to put into multiple seed stock that they could then seed into the river system. This was a biological control that had no side effects other than the eradication of the carp by eventually eradicating all the females from the system, dropping the population dramatically by making only males. It was due to be released, and if my memory serves me correctly, the government cut funding from it. This was a CSIRO project. The government cut funding from it, so it couldn't be released. The next year, they questioned, and this is just going from memory, so a couple of these facts could be wrong, and I'm not saying that I'm completely right. But the next year they said, hey, look, we've got this fantastic idea to release koi herpes virus into the environment and get rid of the carp. We don't think that it'll, cross over to other native fish. And they're still debating the koi herpes virus release within Australia. Now, I don't know exactly how many years ago that was, but if the daughterless carp technology was used, we would now be at 5 or 6 years into that project. How many thousands of carp would have been produced up until that point that would then be passing these genes on when they bred with other females that didn't have the gene, that then only produced males? They will essentially breed themselves out of existence within the river system, because eventually the population will dilute with this gene so much that no females will be produced, and then we've only got to wait for the males to die off. As well as that, then you've got netting and biological control and so forth. And yet they then want to go and release this disease into the environment. I mean, it makes no sense when a better technology is available to use such an archaic, yeah. And then like, they want to release this koi herpes virus, and then they wanted to ban the import of gouramis and all these other species because there's a chance, not even a proven chance, but a chance that it might cross over to native fish, like Murray cod and things like that, which arguably, when these fish got sick, they were feeding live gouramis to these fish, which they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. But then they want to release koi herpes virus into the environment with absolutely no ability to control it whatsoever. So my response is, what do I think of it? To be completely blunt, I think it's absolute madness and complete bullshit. It's ridiculous. With the technology and the knowledge that we have today, I cannot fathom how people can think that is a good idea. I can't fathom it. I'm dumbfounded by the fact that it's still on the table. Triploid carp, exactly. James, how do air bubbles oxygenate the water? I heard that the contact time of the bubbles with the water wasn't enough time to put the tiny molecule of oxygen in. Is there any truth to that? No. The size of the bubble definitely influences how much oxygen is transferred. So the smaller the bubble, the higher the oxygen transfer efficiency. There is a lot of oxygen transfer at the surface. So when air bubbles float up, they drag water with them. Okay? The more air bubbles you have and the denser the plume, the more water it will drag with it because it's got a lot more spaces in there to drag water with it, yeah? So the air contacting the surface is surface contact, which then dissolves oxygen from the air into the water at the water to air interface, right? If it's doing it there, it's got to be doing it with the bubbles that are flowing up through the water. My laptop bag. Right here. Excuse me for just 1 second, guys. So it's got to be doing it in the. It has to be doing it in the water as the air bubbles are flowing up, right? But then it's also taking that highly oxygenated water from the top and circulating it down, because when it's going to the top, it's flowing out and down as it's being sucked up again, right? So, James, if you're interested, I could give you more information on the oxygen transfer efficiencies of diffused aeration tube. I have the data, actually, if you wanted to talk more about it. So the smaller the bubble, the better the oxygen transfer. If air bubbles didn't transfer oxygen to the water because the molecule's so small, then ultrafine oxygen diffusers would serve no purpose. So ultrafine oxygen diffusers have a 400 to 500 micron sized bubble with pure oxygen in water, and they reach like a 70 to 90% transfer rate of oxygen into the water depending on injection depth. So, yeah, it does work. You do get a lot of oxygen transfer at the surface, but you do get a lot of oxygen transferred by the bubbles as well. A lot of it's got to do with depth. In an aquarium that's only 30 centimetres deep, you might not get a lot, but you'll still get some. In tanks that are a metre deep, in an aquaculture tank, 1.2 metres deep, you'll get quite a bit more. The deeper you go, the better the oxygen transfer is, but the deeper you go, so say over 3 metres deep, you start to run the risk of dissolving nitrogen into the water as well, which can create nitrogen gas problems with gas bubble disease in your fish, and yeah, you don't want to do that. Okay, let's create a discussion about hydrograms in the group. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. So we went over the bullshit idea of putting herpes virus into the environment to wipe out carp. Triploid carp, yes. Oxygen bubbles, yes. Hydrogram, yes. Who else has got more questions? Anyone? Is anyone pouring a beverage? James, a question for you actually. Do you still have the big Murray cod? In the store? In that 1,500 litre aquaculture tank? How big is he now? Length, kilos, both? Over 3 feet, nice. He'd be good eating at this size. He would have got primo food. But yeah, old Murray. I think I actually remember I sold you that tank back at Aquasonic, actually. Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear. Maricold, they're like dogs, man. They're great pets. Yeah. Okay. Quarantining freshwater ornamental plants. How to, how long? They can be carriers of snails, which can be carriers of fish disease. Okay. I have to say I'm not an expert in this, but if we're talking about reduction of disease, I would think that the same rules apply if there's organisms in there that can carry those pathogens. But the same as fish. And you raise a good point about snails as well, which is why tissue culture plants are so great, because they're sterile. You know? So, look, my thoughts would be a pre-treatment to rid the snails off the plants, and honestly, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe hydrogen peroxide. I don't know. That'd probably bust them. But they do have the ability to close up, so I don't know how effective it would be. Copper, maybe a pre-treatment of copper, but copper will also defoliate your plants, so that's not such a great idea. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I would be very interested to hear anyone who does have experience with that. Maybe that's another subject that we could post up in the group for a little bit of group discussion, and maybe getting some group knowledge about quarantining, preventative cleaning of plants, carrying disease, stuff like that. And I admit that a lot of people believe that plants are safer because they're plants, they're not fish. But as Kevin called them, phromites, I believe, was the term. I believe was the term. Perfect example. Not sure how much Murray weighs. Yeah, no, I remember that. That was cool. That was good. Yeah, that was fun. Need to figure out his next one soon. Well, there's plenty of different options. You could go a big round tank again. There's plenty of fiberglass manufacturers out there that do square tanks that put acrylic windows in them as well. You could just go a big bastard of a glass aquarium. Plenty of different options. The problem with round tanks is it's hard to put decent windows in them, so pretty much stuck with a square tank. Square sides, all rectangular, like long, and to get the volume in it as well. You don't get the self-cleaning aspect that you would with a square tank with better hydraulics, or even a round tank with even better tank hydraulics for self-cleaning. But at the end of the day, it's a display tank. You're probably going to be getting in there and cleaning anyway. And the larger the tank, the probably easier it is to put a mask and snorkel on and get in there with the siphon. 6x18 by 4 fiberglass. It's a nice size. So you mean 6 foot by 18 foot by 4 foot? I hope. Is that what you mean? I mean not 6 foot by 18 inches by 4 foot. 18 foot would be nice. That'd be bloody lovely. Is anyone in here an avid angler at all? Or even an avid horticulturalist? The three, aquariums, fishing and horticulture, tend to go together most of the time. I'm just wondering if anyone has those sort of interests at all. Any manufacturers in Australia for fiberglass tanks? James, PM me. I'll hook you up. Yeah, big cod, big tank, definitely. Their mouths, they're all mouth cod. And by God, do they hit hard on the lure. They are fun. If it's cold, it's like winding in a bloody house brick, or 10. But if they got go in them and the water's a bit warmer, geez, they can fight well. Fish your friends, not food. Yeah, look, yes, but also fish are incredibly nutritious, high in omega-3 fatty acids, and a good source of protein. And fish don't fart, unlike cows who create methane. Fish don't fart, except for a herring. One species of herring farts. It was actually recorded when people said fish don't fart. They actually found one fish that did fart. But I digress. It's not like cattle. So, and a lot more sustainable, better food conversion rates. I'm on the aquaculture train right now, people. Can't tell. Yeah, look, fish farming. Fish farming. Way of the future. That's why this year aquaculture finally outstripped wild catch. This year just gone. Very, very good times for aquaculture. Well, fish are friends, not food. But if I remember correctly, Kevin, you had the salmon at the NZAP conference, did you not? At the dinner. Or am I remembering incorrectly? And I'm just trying to get you in trouble. I saw you eating sushi though at one of the lunches. I'm sure I did. And if I didn't, I'm sorry. Again, I'm just pulling you, Jane. All sorts of seafood is good for you, except like puff fish. You don't want to be eating a lot of that, or because poisonous. Yeah. You've been 12 years without seafood. Is everything okay? Seriously, is everything okay? 12 years without seafood? God, I don't know how to survive. You're trying to set an invasion lionfish at Macna. Oh my God, what an awesome idea. Is there anyone doing wild catch of those and actually, like, have a market for them? Because as a species of cod, I have to imagine that they'd be bloody tasty. And they grow to a decent size too, and pretty fast. Like, lionfish grow pretty friggin' fast. And they're a predatory fish. They're not a scavenger, so they've got that really, nice flesh. You know what you should do? I'm sure you've done it already. Is you should find someone harvesting them maybe or something like that. Get on the sustainability train with them. Say, we're going to do a big launch at Macna. This is the amount of guests that we have. Good publicity for it. We'll try and flog the bejesus out of it. Get you some airtime maybe. It's a big problem. That invasive lionfish problem. It's a big, big problem. Yeah. Well, you better start sending emails then and tell them to get more rods in the water. Bloody hell. But yeah, cod, groper, getting to be a much bigger market in Australia. Cod track goes for $80 a kilo US wholesale on the Japanese and Chinese live market. Like, it's ridiculous. The price people pay for them, and they're beautiful eating fish too. Absolutely gorgeous eating fish. Alright, we've got 8 people here. I need more questions. I've got 3 friend requests and 16 notifications since I started this too. I never get that much. I don't know what's going on. More questions, people. Does anyone have any more questions? Yeah, I'm trying to work out what the best course of action might be for that, for Q&As or whatever. Need people with a bit more experience with video conferencing and stuff like that. Some people like to talk, some people don't, and it can turn into a bit of a quagmire with multiple people talking at one time and stuff like that. So there has to be a way to regulate it. I'm sure we can figure it out, but yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking about doing this on YouTube, but then I couldn't be bothered to set it up on Facebook Live, which is easier. So, yeah. But thanks for your input, Kevin. Thanks for dropping by again soon, man. Have a good night. Talk to you soon. Does anyone else have any questions at all? Started to quiet down a bit. I think the 10 o'clock time's pretty much the cut-off for everyone by the look of it. I've still got 8 people viewing, and no one said no, they don't have any more questions, but no one says they do have any more questions. I'm just wondering if any of those 8 viewers, any of you guys have anything to add, anything to ask, anything at all. About anything aquatic related, anything really. We're here to have a chat and have fun, maybe learn something along the way. But this is all about industry involvement and getting to know each other and having a bit of fun along the way, maybe learning something. So yeah, if there's anything any of you guys have questions about. Still 7 people in here, and I'm not seeing 7 people talking. She's well, guys, I'll wait another minute or so, but if I don't get any more interaction out of you guys, I'm going to take that as an indication that no one has any more questions. And oh, here we go. Right, hey, I spoke too soon. Anthony Tedford. How would you dramatically increase water quality in a heavily stocked shop system? Having a high nitrate issue, and I just can't keep the water changes up to it. Okay. Anthony, I'm not sure what store you own. I'd be very interested to talk about your system a little bit more. And get to know you a little bit better, because honestly, I've never heard of you, but I've been out of the retail game for quite some time. So my first question would be, how big is the water volume and what filtration do you have on the system? I'm assuming that this is fresh water, but it could also be salt water. Salt water is going to be a little bit easier to manage. Fresh water can be managed, but sort of need to know what your filtration setup is. I.e., is it it's a heavily stocked shop system, so I'm assuming you've got a sump, it's a recirculating system, biological filter media of some description. What's your pre-filter? What's your biological media? Is it a trickle filter? What size is the system? How much water are you changing each day? That sort of thing, a week or whatever it might be. 1,200 litre system, fresh water with a sump. Okay, so what sort of biological filter media do you have in that sump? Or what sort of media in general, or filtration in general, do you have in that sump? Is it just a filter mat on top of bioballs? Is it filter mat then flows into a submerged filter? What are we talking about here? backy rods. Okay. Are they exposed? Is it a trickle filter? Or is it submerged? And this is very important, actually, whether it's a trickle filter or whether it's submerged. And also, what's your pre-filter? Is it matte? Is it like filter matte? Is it a filter sock? Falls through filter floss through a wet dry area, then submerge. Okay, all right. So, you've probably heard of people, especially in the marine aquarium scene, calling trickle filters or bioballs or trickle filters nitrate factories. And they are. It's what they're designed to do. Trickle filters have a very high oxygen content. That's what nitrifying bacteria need. And they need water flow, and they need oxygen, and they need food, which is ammonia or nitrite. So that's what they're designed to do, and they do it very, very well. They do it with high loading, they do it with low loading. The more water and ammonia you pass on them, over them, the more ammonia that they'll consume. They do their job really well, and it's horses for courses. So you've got ammonia and nitrite being removed. I just don't think you've got enough denitrification area there to support active denitrification within the system. If that's all you have, my question would be probably swap out the floss, which is a wool. Is it filter flosses in a mat, or is it filter flosses in wool? And how often are you changing it? I would recommend that you probably change it every 2 weeks to stop the breakdown of crap in it. I would assess the amount of mold build-up within the system and try and mitigate that somehow by siphoning it out. I would ask the question of what substrate you have, if any, in the tanks. My next question would be, how many fish have you got in this 1,200 litre system? Are you stocking like 500 neon tetras to a tank, 200 other tetras to a tank? Like, what's your stocking density like? If you stock fish anything like I used to stock fish, I understand your pain. I used to do 50% water changes a week, as in Matt, once a fortnight to change it. Okay, so I used to do 50% water changes a week, and still I was at max on the API nitrate test kit. Now, arguably, it's probably not the most accurate nitrate test kit, but there was a metric butt ton of nitrate in there. This is in no way a plug. Well, I mean, it is a plug. It's a recommendation, but I mean, I don't have shares in Marine Pure. I'm just going to say Marine Pure, if you put the right amount in and give it a bit of time, as well as seeding it with a good probiotic bacteria to get things going, get waste breakdown in the system, I think that you'll go a long way to reducing your problems. It's a highly stocked system, so you're probably going to need more than the recommended amount that you would usually have from a home aquarium that Marine Pure would recommend. You could use other sorts of media that do the same thing. However, other sorts of media that have high surface areas are usually made of calcium carbonate based material, which will affect the pH. In some instances, that effect on pH will not be an issue. However, the effect on pH will result from the breakdown of calcium carbonate, and if those bricks, or whatever they are, like the mantis bricks or any other variation of those, as they break down, they will dissolve and they will decay. Marine Pure is, again, an aluminosilicate material that is baked and fired. It is a little bit of a crumbly material, but it does maintain its structure over quite some time. I personally have Marine Pure balls in my canister filter that I had in my marine nano tank, and they are, God, they'd be 8 or 10 years old. and they're pretty much the same shape that they went in. Obviously, they're being bashed around a bit, but they're not, terrible. You need area that's going to result in low dissolved oxygen levels, so that the proliferation of denitrifying bacteria can grow and take that nitrogen, that nitrate, and convert it to nitrogen gas. Now, the marine pure bricks are good for that, and they will harbour a larger amount of denitrifying bacteria because they have physically a larger area that is oxygen free or lower oxygen, right? The marine pure balls, they will have aerobic areas or oxygen rich areas that will promote nitrification, but on the internals, they'll closer to the center, probably 5 or 10 million, they'll have the ability to denitrify. Okay, because when the water's flowing through these, the bacteria on the outer perimeter, the first 5 to 10 mil of area, and this goes for any media, okay, will take up the oxygen as they're processing the ammonia and nitrite. And as the water gets in further and further, less and less oxygen occurs, and therefore the proliferation of denitrifying bacteria can occur and grow within the internals of that media. That even happens from top to bottom. Like if you've got a stack of media like this, and it's all submerged, and you have really high nitrification in this top area, as you get further down, the amount of oxygen will drop, and therefore you'll have a higher percentage of denitrifying bacteria down here than you will up here. In an external wet-dry system, you've got oxygen everywhere. So you're not going to get denitrification, which is why nitrification occurs so well in those environments. So certain media do better than others. Pore size is a big thing. Marine Pure has the ability, and other medias that are like a melt-blown, larger pore size, have the ability to flush solids out, like a moving bed filter. A moving bed filter that we use in aquaculture has the ability to maintain biofilm thickness, as well as maintain oxygen because it's very open, right? Marine Pure sort of goes halfway in between, and other medias like Marine Pure sort of go halfway in between, where they have a large pore size to allow water flow, but also the transport of nutrients. But the design of them, especially the balls, allows nitrification in the outer parts and denitrification in the inner parts. If you're physically looking for denitrification within your system, I would probably recommend the bricks for denitrification. Now, it's not going to be instant. Even if you seed with the probiotic bacteria, and like the probiotic bacteria that you get, you're going to have an active denitrifying bacteria in it, yeah? So we've isolated denitrifying bacteria as well that we have in our probiotic mix. Others will have it as well. You can just let it occur naturally if you wanted to, okay? So it will take some time, but it will drop. If in doubt, run a trial. But you're just lacking the environment for denitrification to occur, essentially. You can get on top of it. You just need more of that environment to support denitrification within your system in order to fuel that reduction. That's all you need. You could do it with, Christ, a crude system would be like scoria, yeah, like the landscaping scoria, the red, like porous media. Put that in a reactor of some description, even a canister filter, wind the flow right down, so it's like a trickle coming out. Or have a line with a 4 mil quick connect line, like an RO line coming off your return pump, and pump that through at very slow flow rates through that reactor. That'll create an oxygen-free zone that will harbour denitrification. The problem is that the design of the system will directly influence the production of hydrogen sulfide and other things. And if you don't have enough flow in there and you don't have the ability to flush solids, then you are going to potentially get harmful byproducts. That's where marine pure and other medias of that design sort of shine, because they allow waste to be flushed. They allow good circulation through the media, but the design of the media means that the bacteria that inhabits the different zones regulates the amount of nitrification and denitrification that can occur within that zone. It's a very, very smart design, those sorts of medias. Organic carbon is the food and marine pure is the house. Yes, so Paul's exactly right. Marine pure or any other media like that has a porous structure that allows water flow to occur through, flush waste through, but still allow ammonia, nitrate through, and other nutrient sources such as organic carbon through, maximize the potential for nitrate reduction to occur. Now, organic carbon, you're probably familiar with biopellets, NOPOX, or NO3PO4X from Red Sea. They're an organic carbon, and that's what heterotrophic bacteria use. Now, the predominant amount of denitrification that happens within the system is from heterotrophic bacteria. Now, there's two sorts of nitrate reduction. There's assimilatory denitrification, which means that bacteria taking nitrate and phosphate, they use it to build biomass and cell structure. They proliferate, and then your protein skimmer rips those out, or your mechanical filtration rips them out. It doesn't work great in fresh water, okay, that assimilatory denitrification. Dissimilatory denitrification. What's going on here? I don't know what's happening. I'll keep talking. Dissimilatory denitrification occurs when you have organic carbon in the presence of bacteria, and they grab the nitrate as an oxygen source or as an electron donor, and they take the nitrogen and break it off, and through various steps turn it into nitrogen gas. So that's where you have the difference, and where you can get rid of nitrate with dissimilatory denitrification within a freshwater system. Organic carbon in that environment is usually provided from the breakdown of waste from food. You're not putting extra organic carbon in like you are with organic carbon dosing in the saltwater system. No other media offers the R&D to ratio nitrifying versus denitrifying without anoxic. Yep, I agree, Paul, based on the information that we currently have on Marine Pure and the history of the product itself. Now, anoxic, I do have to correct you on that term. Anoxic is an environment without oxygen. Anaerobic is the process of the bacteria, or the type of bacteria that are creating an anaerobic reduction of a nutrient in an anoxic environment. So anoxic without oxygen. Oxic or aerobic is with oxygen. Anoxic isn't necessarily a bad environment. It is the anoxic environment in the presence or absence of other waste that creates a danger of harmful byproducts. So that's a deeper dive into the actual anoxic environment. So, like, to give you an idea, an anoxic environment in an estuary system could be around a mangrove area. where you get that really black mud that stinks if you stir it up. That anoxic environment creates nutrient cycling. It creates nitrate reduction. And that will fuel denitrification. It will also, if it's left unchecked and is disturbed, will release hydrogen sulfide, acid sulfate, all that kind of stuff. Anoxic it sounds like a bad term. It's not a bad term. It's how you regulate that anoxic environment and how clean you keep it. And because we're artificially creating that environment, we are able to keep it clean and monitor it. In a deep sand bed, you're not able to do that. You're creating an anoxic environment, which is where all the sort of hoo-ha and danger came from. You're not. It's not a huge concern. The term anoxic, it's how it's managed. I'll go more into that in the bacteria stream. Look, I'm not going to get into what other brands claim and stuff like that. I know you're incredibly passionate about Marine Pure, Paul, as is Chris, as am I. I've done a write-up on Marine Pure that's on their website that links back to my blog about surface area, usable surface area, and so forth. Many, many years ago, I wrote that up when I was doing my blog. I have to agree, Marine Pure is a fantastic product. I'm not going to compare it to other brands. The right media in the right circumstance will produce similar results. It's just how easily it produces those, how easily it self-regulates it, how it does the job without too much drama in your system. And I've got to say from experience, Marine Pure does it pretty bloody well. I've done it with many other medias too, just designing the system right. That's what my job is aquaculture, filtration, and life support system design. Marine Pure does a good job, as do a lot of other medias for a lot of other different applications. Horses for courses, as I said. Have a think about it. Denitrifying area, increasing your denitrifying capabilities by increasing your denitrifying volume. There are medias out there like Marine Pure and others, used in those environments that can produce similar results. So that's what I would recommend. As I said, it's not going to happen overnight. You might take 4, 6, 8 weeks to start noticing results. Look, depending on how many systems you have, it can be quite a big investment. But the benefits of water quality are there. It'll help buffer your pH too. So as you get rid of nitrate and turn it into nitrogen gas, you actually sequester back carbonates or alkalinity within the system, which help to buffer your KH and your pH. So you'll end up having to buffer your pH less as well when you add active denitrification capabilities to your system. So look, have a think about it. Does anyone have any other questions? I've lost my video feed on my screen, but I can see from the live stream that I'm still getting it. So I'll give it another 5 minutes if anyone has any questions at all. I'm just going to zip off and get a cold glass out of the fridge. I'll be back in just a sec. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be back. All right, I'm back. How many people? We got 6 people left in the stream. I'm not sure if anyone has any more questions. These are the benefits of doing your live stream in your garage, sitting your laptop on top of your keg fridge. You can pour a beer while you're talking. Are the little marine pure gems large enough to create an anoxic area inside them? Okay. This is a subject about biofilm thickness, the colonies of bacteria and the microbial herd within those colonies, and what happens with oxygen transfer across a membrane of and a biofilm of bacteria, which is a membrane, right? So in a moving bed biological filter, I'm sure you've seen like the K1 coldness media that bubbles around, you aerate it, and it bumps up against each other and self-cleans itself, right? The reason that moving bed media is so efficient is that it has biofilm control. So it controls the thickness of the biofilm on the outside of the media and on the inside as well, because as the flow's going through, it's shearing off bits and pieces and keeping it nice and thin, right? Thin, younger layers of bacteria, if maintained correctly, are more efficient and can process more ammonia and nitrite than older, thicker layers of bacteria. Now, a thickness of, God, what was it, 0.2 or 0.4 microns, or something like that, or 1 or 2 to 4 microns, is bordering on being too thick to promote the majority of nitrification on that biomedia carrier. 2 to 4 microns of thickness. Could even be 40 microns of thickness or something like that. So you've got even a 1-inch diameter media volume. If it's submerged, not in a trickle filter application because you can have oxygen all the way through it, right? But if it's submerged and you've got nitrification happening on the outer layers and then on the inner layers, yeah, you're going to get denitrification activity. As long as your flow isn't so high that you're going to be just jamming oxygen-rich water through it, and then you could overcome it by having it in a stack and having water flowing from the top to the bottom, high oxygen water going through, and as it goes through the layers, it'll drop in oxygen level, drop in oxygen level, drop in oxygen level to the point where it's starting to fuel denitrification as well. So, you know, yeah. If it's designed properly, if the mass and volume of the biomedia is sized correctly to the flow of the system, then yeah, anything will produce an anoxic zone, because you know you don't need a lot for a biofilm to change from aerobic to anaerobic to create a denitrifying environment. Yeah, it'll harbour denitrifying bacteria, no doubt. In some of the biofilters that I'm currently starting up, which is the denitrification that I'm getting is a function of the bacteria that we've isolated and included in our mix, but it is a very aerobic environment, and we're getting in a moving bed filter, so we're aerating pretty heavily in this filter, and we're getting denitrification within that system as well in a very aerobic environment. Like these filters, there's 8,000 litres of media in it, in a 16,000 litre reactor, and we're pumping in 14 or 1,500 litres a minute of oxygen, of air, diffused air into this to circulate the media. So it's pretty well aerated. And we're getting denitrification in that. And you know, I've got the data to prove it. I've seen ammonia being produced, ammonia dropping, nitrite being produced, nitrite dropping, nitrate being produced, and alkalinity dropping, because as ammonia and nitrite is assimilated and oxidized, you get a drop in alkalinity because your bacteria need that alkalinity as a food source, and nitrate increases. And then you get a drop in nitrate and an increase in alkalinity, because remember, as we denitrify nitrate, we sequester back alkalinity to the system. So I've got the data to prove it. And it happens. And it's happening in a very aerobic environment with media that's not anywhere near as porous as marine pure. So if the gems are in a canister filter, would the flow be too fast? No way that I can answer that. But I can tell you that I have used the marine pure spheres, the 1.5 inch spheres in my canister filter, and I have maintained very low levels of nitrate ongoing, to the point where all my plants are dying because they've got no nutrients. And I feed pretty heavily too. That could be a light thing as well, so I'm not saying that's unequivocally the reason that they're dying. But I do maintain a very low level of nitrate, and everyone that I'd ever sold those to, or any other similar media to that have applied them in the right way, have had similar results. So, you know, if you were to take that marine pure media, even if you were to take the marine pure block and put it in an aerobic environment and trickle water through it, you would arguably get a lot less denitrification or no denitrification at all compared to having it submerged. Sam, Mr. Parker, welcome to the stream. Great to see you here. You've arrived late. Any questions that you have? I think I'm going to give it another 15 minutes, guys. So if anyone has any questions, I can probably take one or two, because that's going to be bordering on 11 o'clock. It'll be running for almost 4 hours at that stage. Yeah, it's probably time I pull the pin. Yeah, does anyone else have any questions whatsoever that they'd like to ask? Always salesman Paul, but yes. I think a more accurate statement would be, do we remember the days before marine pure styles of media and the research and knowledge that came along with it when we had to do so many water changes? And it's a fact of the media was based on legitimate R&D that then allowed us to fuel a development of knowledge within the industry that allowed us to understand these processes better. And that means that we know more about our system. So it's not snake oil anymore. It's actually, you know what, it is actually science that we're dealing with. And, you know, some people with some of these products may sound very salesperson-y, you know, that, you know, they're only recommending one thing or another, whatever it might be. But the fact of the matter is, if the product works, if the science is behind it, and they, one, understand the science, and two, can apply that knowledge to actually achieve a result, and thirdly, they can back up their claims with experience, then what have you got to lose? You know, it's and medias like these type of porous medias, like the mantis media and marine pure, and there's, you know, ones from, like, arguably marine pure was probably one of the first. I mean, you've got the old Siperax and stuff like that as well, the old ceramic noodles, but they, you know, it's kind of chalk and cheese when you look at porosity and stuff like that. And then you've got like the MaxSpect plates they're pretty much like the mantis. And then you've got like the Baki noodles and all that kind of stuff, you know. Some do it better than others. You can get them to pretty much work in all the same way. Some are better for salt water and than they and not so suitable for fresh water, like the calcium carbonate based ones like mantis and maxspect, made out of aragonite or calcium carbonate. If you put them into fresh water, it will push your pH up. I'm pretty sure they're both made of calcium carbonate. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they will push your pH up, and obviously, you know, they'll dissolve over time. Whereas in a saltwater system, not so much. Very negligible dissolution rate, especially if they're in an area that's fairly stable in pH. Because calcium carbonate isn't going to dissolve at, you know, levels of over 7.6 or 7.4 or something like that. So yeah. Knowledge is the key. That's what we're here to learn. We're here to learn about this stuff. And you know, if you have this knowledge and you can pass that on to your customers, a good customer is a well-educated customer. Okay, so that's like me with my kids. I don't, for William, I don't dumb things down for him. You know. He might not understand it. If he doesn't understand, he'll ask me to explain it again or explain it in a different way. But, you know, just because you've got a customer come in that asks, or, you know, questions like, can I put a clownfish in a bowl or something like that, you explain to them why. You don't dumb it down to them. You know, you pick, you know, how you're going to explain it and the analogies that you use to explain it. But as I said, a well-educated customer is a good customer. So if they see that they know your stuff, they're going to come back. If they have the information, then they're going to be able to comprehend the other stuff that you tell them as they progress within their hobby. Obviously, you can't go jamming them with, you know, second year university chemistry straight out of the gate. But, you know, like, don't, you know, if you understand it, they're going to understand it better. They're going to see your passion. They're going to be able to use that. They're going to be more appreciative of the time that you spend with them. We're dwindling. We've only got 5 people in the stream now. Does anyone have any questions, or shall we pull the pin? A little bit less on the interaction today, but we didn't have a lot of time to get a lot of interest generated, and we didn't have a subject. But I think we've covered some fairly good information in this stream, and had a good amount of fun as well, which is fantastic. So thanks for everyone that's come along, that is still here and was here and has left. It's yeah, it's really great to see the interaction. I'll leave it a couple of minutes. It's 10:51. At 10:53, if I haven't got any more questions, I think I might pull the pin and skedaddle if anyone doesn't have any questions. But by all means, I'm not rushing you on a time clock. So if you do have another question, by all means, shoot it at me, and I'm happy to answer it. Not that I have to work tomorrow, but anyone with the store, I hope that you guys have a good weekend's trade, obviously, and I hope that the trend keeps trending upwards for you guys. It's good to see the industry doing so well at the moment, so it's fantastic. All right, guys. Well, look, it looks like I haven't got any more questions. Happy to answer any questions by private message or even by email. You can get a hold of me on this group, obviously. Yeah, look, thanks very much for dropping by and joining in the video chat. It's been a blast yet again, and hope to see you all soon. Have a good night, guys. Have a good weekend.